Millionaire abandons his poor wife. 10 years later, he finds her running a fortune. What he discovers changes everything. Hello, viewer. Thanks for joining us. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments, along with the city you're watching from. Now let's continue with the story. Isabella Torres stood by the window of a small cafe on the Upper West Side, a steaming cup of black coffee cradled in her hands. Outside, the autumn sun tried its best to break through the morning chill, casting a pale glow on the sidewalk. The warmth of the cafe contrasted with the stirring emotions inside her. She skimmed the business article displayed on her tablet screen, breath catching when she noticed the name Marcus Reynolds written in bold letters. An old ache tugged at her heart the moment she realized the piece praised Marcus for a recent financial move. In the quiet hum of the cafe, her memories roared to life. Isabella, now 42, wore a tailored navy blue blazer over dark jeans, a subtle nod to her current status as a successful entrepreneur. Just a decade ago, she couldn't have afforded a single item in her present wardrobe. Her long, dark hair brushed her shoulders, and faint lines by her eyes suggested both wisdom and battles won. The cafe's gentle chatter melted away as she recalled her marriage to Marcus, the man who had dismissed her as too ordinary for his world of high-stakes success. At that time, she had questioned her self-worth, wondering if she truly lacked the sophistication he so prized. Suddenly, her phone vibrated against the small table. Setting her coffee down, she glanced at the notification, a text from an unknown number that read, "Congratulations on all your success. We need you at next month's industry summit. Marcus Reynolds will be there." A flurry of conflicting feelings rushed through her. She hadn't seen him in person since their divorce 10 years earlier. Throughout those years, she had built a life on her own terms, forging the success she once believed impossible. At that moment, the cafe door opened. A friend and confidant, Alicia Rosenberg, stepped inside. Alicia, a warm-hearted woman in her early 50s, found Isabella near the window and joined her. "I had a feeling you'd be here," Alicia said gently, removing her scarf. She noticed the tension in Isabella's eyes. "I take it you've seen the latest news about Marcus?" Isabella offered a faint smile and nodded. "It still gets to me, even after all these years." She paused, struggling to articulate how raw the memories still felt. "I don't know if I should attend this summit. Facing him again might open old wounds I've tried so hard to heal." Alicia laid a reassuring hand on Isabella's arm. "Listen, you have no reason to fear him anymore. You've proven your strength. Besides, you're the one everyone wants to hear from now." Isabella let out a slow breath. "That's what makes me so nervous. I've worked tirelessly to earn a place at the table. Yet every time I read about Marcus, I remember how he used to belittle me. Part of me still wonders if I truly belong among those corporate giants." Alicia shook her head. "You've built something remarkable. Torres Innovations is a force in the tech market. No one can take that away from you." They continued talking, the hum of the cafe intensifying as the morning rush set in. The conversation turned to recollections of when Isabella first discovered her aptitude for business, well after Marcus walked away. She spent countless nights balancing multiple jobs and teaching herself the ropes of entrepreneurship. While Alicia cheered her on, others doubted that Isabella could rise above her humble beginnings. Over the years, her success had surprised even those who knew her best. Before heading out, Alicia squeezed Isabella's hand. "You have a choice. You can let him keep that power over you, or you can walk into that summit and show him who you've become." Isabella nodded, her mind racing. Once Alicia left, Isabella lingered by the window, staring at the swirl of leaves on the sidewalk. She recalled how Marcus used to dismiss her concerns, telling her she didn't understand real ambition. She had grown tired of feeling inadequate and alone. It felt like a lifetime ago, yet in some ways the memory was still painfully vivid. She picked up her phone again, rereading the text. The idea of confronting Marcus made her stomach churn, but a quieter, resolute part of her insisted it was time. Once the initial anxiety subsided, Isabella realized the opportunity at hand. She had worked too hard to shy away now. With a steadying breath, she gathered her things and stepped out into the crisp autumn air. Even as old emotions threatened to surface, she reminded herself of how far she'd come. The morning sun flickered through the trees overhead, and she allowed its warmth to guide her forward, uncertain but unwilling to let the past dictate her future. Inside the sleek lobby of Torres Innovations, the air buzzed with the usual Monday activity. Assistants scurried about, each wearing professional grey or navy suits. Glass partitions revealed modern offices where employees typed furiously on laptops or spoke into headsets. At the heart of this organized bustle stood Isabella, scanning a digital display that showcased her company's latest product line. She couldn't help but feel a surge of pride each time she recognized how drastically her life had changed. Her assistant, a young man named David Brooks, approached with a cautious smile. "Ms. Torres, here are the briefs you requested. And there's something you should see." He handed her a slim folder containing printed emails discussing a major potential acquisition. "It appears the Reynolds Corporation is on the verge of a significant merger, but rumors say they're struggling financially." Isabella's heart fluttered, though she kept her expression composed. She thanked David and retreated to her office, a spacious room adorned with potted plants and a cityscape view of Manhattan. Sunlight filtered through the glass walls, illuminating a shelf lined with framed photos, shots from her early days in business, awards ceremonies, and a few with Alicia, who had stood by her side from the beginning. Opening the folder, Isabella found more than she expected. Proposals, rumor-laden emails, and even an invitation to a private corporate event where industry leaders would discuss the future of tech mergers. Marcus Reynolds' name appeared repeatedly. She noted the speculation. The once mighty mogul might be nearing a precarious downfall unless he secured new partnerships. At first, a flicker of satisfaction stirred inside her. Then came the conflicted pang of conscience. She knew this world, understood its ruthlessness. If Marcus was in trouble, he might attempt to leverage any connection to her, whether personal or professional. Just as she finished reviewing the documents, Alicia stepped in. "I came as soon as I heard about the event. It's happening in 3 weeks, right?" Isabella nodded. "Yes, in Boston. They're framing it as a summit on innovation in tech. But reading between the lines, it sounds like a scramble to rescue failing conglomerates." Alicia walked around the office, stopping at a framed photograph of the two of them from years ago, smiling at a small entrepreneurial showcase. "I remember that day. You were so nervous to present your first prototype. Look at what you've built since." Isabella smiled softly, but the feeling was fleeting. "I've worked hard, Alicia. I don't know if I'm ready to see him again, especially if he's in dire straits, and I have no idea how the business community will react to the possibility of a meeting between me and Marcus. He used to brag about how he traded up after leaving me." Alicia's expression darkened. "If anything, he ought to be ashamed. The way he ended things was cruel, humiliating you in front of friends. But you have to be strategic, Bella. If you show up at this summit, you need to be prepared." Isabella took a breath, then glanced at the stack of papers again. "Even if Marcus is cornered, he's no fool. I'm certain he's working every angle to shore up his position. He might try to spin a story to make it look like I'm the one begging him for a deal." Alicia crossed her arms. "So what's your move?" Isabella stared at the city skyline. "I don't know yet. I want to protect everything I've built. But at the same time, there's a part of me that wants him to see just how far I've come, how wrong he was about me. Before Alicia could respond, David knocked lightly on the open door. "Ms. Torres, there's someone here to see you." "He says it's urgent." Isabella exchanged a puzzled look with Alicia. "Who is it?" she asked. David hesitated. "He wouldn't give his name, but he mentioned something about your past with Marcus Reynolds." Isabella felt her pulse quicken. "Send him in." Alicia stepped aside as a tall, silver-haired man in a tailored suit entered. He introduced himself as James Holloway, a financial analyst who claimed to have worked briefly with Reynolds Corporation. "I know we've never met," he began, "but I've seen firsthand some documents that may affect your next steps. You should be aware of what Marcus has up his sleeve." Alicia and Isabella shared a wary glance, uncertain what to believe. As the man began to recount his observations, describing potential irregularities in Marcus's accounts, Isabella felt a sinking sensation in her stomach. Everything she had feared about crossing paths with Marcus now loomed larger. She realized this summit wouldn't be just another corporate event. It might be the defining battleground of her professional life. Isabella paced around her living room that evening, eyes repeatedly drifting to the neatly stacked documents on the coffee table. The quiet of her upscale Manhattan apartment felt unsettling, and even the soft classical music playing in the background did little to soothe her nerves. Every time she glanced at Marcus's name in the headlines or on her phone, her memories took her back to a time when she felt she had no voice. As she picked up a folder detailing James Holloway's claims, she couldn't help thinking about how her former husband once dismissed her ideas outright. Years ago, she had been shy, unsure of herself, and deeply influenced by Marcus's condescending remarks. Now, with every step she took across her polished hardwood floor, she reminded herself that she wasn't that timid person anymore. Yet, a small voice inside her continued to question whether her success was just a stroke of luck. When the door buzzer sounded, she welcomed the interruption. It was Alicia, balancing a box of takeout on one arm. "I figured you might not have eaten. Mind if I come in?" Isabella nodded appreciatively, and they headed to the kitchen island. Alicia arranged containers of Thai food and handed her a pair of chopsticks. "What's on your mind?" she asked. Isabella sighed. "Marcus. This whole summit. And now this mysterious evidence suggesting financial misconduct on his part." She eyed a bowl of pad thai without much appetite. "It's like an avalanche of complications, and I'm standing right in its path." Alicia looked concerned. "Are you considering confronting him directly?" She shrugged. "I keep going back and forth. On one hand, part of me wants to see him suffer the consequences of his arrogance. On the other, I don't want to be consumed by revenge or let this overshadow my achievements." Alicia bit her lip. "That's understandable. But remember, you're not the same woman you were. You built a company from the ground up, you gained the respect of major players in the industry, and you have a loyal team ready to stand behind you." She waved a hand at the modern surroundings. "Everything here is proof of your capabilities." Isabella looked around, appreciating how every piece of furniture and artwork represented a milestone in her journey. "I know, it's just, every time I think about how badly he treated me, I feel that old sting of humiliation. Those nights crying in a cramped apartment because I couldn't afford the rent, wondering if I'd ever be able to trust anyone again." Alicia reached across the island and gave Isabella's hand a squeeze. "You deserve to see what happens when you stand in your truth. Don't let his past cruelty dictate your future choices." As they finished their meal, the conversation turned to practical matters. Alicia suggested that Isabella assemble a team of legal experts and financial consultants who could verify James Holloway's claims. Isabella agreed, but also confessed her reluctance to open old wounds. After Alicia left, Isabella thumbed through an old photo album. Most of the pictures had been taken before she married Marcus. She paused at a photograph of herself in her early 20s, wide-eyed and hopeful. The resemblance to her current self was there, but the innocence was long gone. In the quiet, she recalled the day Marcus had asked for a divorce. He hadn't even pretended it was amicable. He wanted a different life, one that didn't include a woman who, in his words, lacked the sophistication to navigate the high-end circles. She had stood there, stunned, while he listed her perceived shortcomings. At the time, she'd believed every hurtful word. Shaking off the memory, Isabella closed the album. She made a note on her phone. Investigate potential corporate ties, confirm legitimacy of documents. If she was going to step into this arena, she needed clarity. She wasn't about to confront Marcus without being fully prepared. In that moment, she resolved to move forward cautiously, refusing to be ruled by old insecurities. She had come too far to let fear or his looming presence knock her down again. Late the next afternoon, the sound of hurried footsteps and ringing phones filled the corridors of Torres Innovations. The entire office seemed on edge as news spread that the Boston Summit was quickly becoming the hottest ticket in the tech world. Isabella sat at the head of a long, modern conference table, reviewing slides for an upcoming presentation. She felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on her, yet her focus was razor-sharp. Her team filtered into the room. Among them was Sonia Patel, an up-and-coming executive who had joined Torres Innovations a few months earlier. Sonia was in her mid-30s, with an analytical mind and a soft-spoken but confident demeanor. She respected Isabella's rise to success and hoped to learn from her example. Today, Sonia's brow was furrowed with concern. "We're getting a lot of inquiries about whether we plan to participate in any deals at the summit," she began. "People are speculating that we might team up with Reynolds Corporation," Isabella exhaled. "Let's make it clear we're exploring opportunities that fit our business model. Don't give definitive answers about Reynolds or any other conglomerate." The rest of the team nodded in agreement. As they discussed strategies, someone mentioned rumors that Marcus Reynolds himself had contacted other influential CEOs, proposing a last-minute collaborative project. Isabella's jaw tightened at the mention of her ex-husband's name. She recalled the letter she'd received recently, containing an old photograph of them during happier times, accompanied by a cryptic note. "There's more to our story than you think." Who had sent that note, and why now? Sonia tapped her pen on the table. "Isabella, do you think Reynolds is trying to corner the market or salvage what's left of his empire?" "The data suggests he's on shaky ground." Isabella flipped through her notes. "He's undoubtedly clinging to every last shred of influence. Let's remain cautious but open-minded. Our priority is growing Torres Innovations in a way that aligns with our values." After the meeting, Isabella retreated to her private office, where she found Alicia waiting with a message. "Your presence has been requested on a panel at the summit," Alicia said, handing over a formal invitation. "A high-profile group of speakers will discuss adaptive strategies in tech mergers. Rumor has it Marcus is also slated to speak." The words made Isabella's pulse quicken. She had been steadily building up mental and emotional defenses, yet the direct collision course with Marcus felt overwhelming. "I suppose it was just a matter of time," she muttered. Alicia took a seat on the edge of Isabella's desk. "Are you up for this?" Isabella let out a heavy sigh. "It's a huge platform. Missing it would send the wrong message to investors and partners. And maybe it's time I stood on the same stage with Marcus, show him and everyone else the kind of leader I've become." Alicia nodded. Then we need to make sure you're fully prepared. No surprises. In the coming days, pressure mounted as the date of the summit drew closer. Journalists reached out for comments about a possible showdown between Isabella and Marcus. Speculation ran rampant online, with headlines implying a dramatic face-off. While most of Isabella's staff remained supportive, she could sense their anxiety about the unpredictability of Marcus's tactics. Each passing hour, it seemed, brought new rumors or bits of half-verified intel, suggesting he was planning some bold move at the summit. Isabella's internal conflict grew. She wanted to protect her company and her hard-won reputation, but she also felt a moral tug. Memories of the past mingled with the responsibilities of her present. Part of her wrestled with the question, did she harbor a desire for revenge? Or was she simply determined to hold her ground as a respected business leader? She knew one wrong move, one emotional decision, could undermine years of dedication. Late into the evening, she remained in her office, reviewing potential scenarios with Sonia, who highlighted different strategies. Sonia looked up from her laptop, concern evident in her eyes. "We need clarity, Isabella. If Marcus approaches you for a direct business arrangement, how do you plan to respond?" Isabella paused, glancing toward the darkened skyline outside the window. The night lights of New York flickered like a million possibilities. "I can't answer that yet," she said quietly. "I'll do what's best for Torres Innovations, and I'll remember who I am in the process." She closed her laptop, exhaustion shadowing her expression. As she left the office, she tried to shake off the unease settling around her. Deep down, she sensed this was only the beginning of the real test, a test that would demand not just her business acumen, but her emotional resilience as well. Isabella found herself on the brink of a crucial decision, torn between stepping fully into the unknown and staying in the safety of the familiar. A cold drizzle began to fall as she walked through the narrow streets near her apartment, carrying a sealed envelope addressed to her from an unidentified sender. The envelope arrived that morning with a distinct seal she vaguely recognized from her past. Inside, she discovered an old photograph of her and Marcus laughing together at a black tie event. The scrawled note on the back read, "Don't forget what you once cared about." Staring at the photo, Isabella felt a rush of conflicting emotions, nostalgia, anger, and an odd sense of resolve. She was no longer the starry-eyed woman who believed that love alone would protect her from life's cruelties. Yet the reminder of that joyful evening tugged at her heart. They had once been happy, or so she thought. Perhaps the picture was meant to unearth memories that would weaken her stance at the upcoming summit. She refused to let that happen. Entering her building, Isabella passed the security desk, nodding politely to the doorman. The elevator ride to her floor felt interminably long, each stop marking a mental checkpoint of her tangled feelings. When she finally stepped into her apartment, Alicia was waiting. The tension in the air was palpable. "I've been reading through the updated finance reports," Alicia began, her voice hushed. "It seems Reynolds Corporation is teetering on the edge, and there's talk that Marcus might approach you not only for a business partnership, but for some kind of reconciliation." Isabella set her umbrella aside, water droplets pooling on the foyer's hardwood floor. "That's absurd," she replied, though a tremor of uncertainty ran through her. "He made his choices years ago. He wanted a life where he didn't have to consider my feelings or aspirations. I doubt he's changed overnight." Alicia nodded slowly. "Still, the rumor mill is spinning, and whoever sent you that photo might be trying to stir up dormant emotions." Isabella carried the envelope and photograph to her living room, where she placed them on the coffee table. "I can't let sentiment guide me. There's too much at stake now." They discussed the potential risks of ignoring Marcus's fragile position. If his company collapsed, it could send shockwaves across the industry. If Isabella stepped in, she could either save him or orchestrate his downfall. The moral and business implications weighed heavily on her mind. Later that evening, Sonia called with urgent news. "Isabella, there's an offer from an anonymous investor who wants to partner with us. It looks extremely attractive, but I ran a background check, and it appears linked to Reynolds Corporation's portfolio." Isabella felt her chest tighten. "So, it's another way for Marcus to breach our defenses?" "Yes," Sonia said quietly. "At least that's how it seems. We can't confirm it yet, but the pattern matches prior investments he's made under shell companies." Isabella thanked Sonia for the update and ended the call. She looked to Alicia, who had overheard through the speaker. "What game is Marcus playing now?" Alicia asked, frustration creeping into her voice. Isabella shook her head. "He's testing the waters, trying to gauge my reaction. Part of me wants to slam the door shut on any attempt he makes. Another part thinks it might be worth hearing him out, if only to prove I can stand on equal footing." Alicia crossed her arms. "Just be careful. You've built something priceless here, and it's not just about money. It's about the respect you command, the trust people have in you. Marcus can't buy or take that away unless you let him." Isabella sighed, feeling the weight of every decision press down upon her. "I know, and I won't let him manipulate my narrative." They spent the next hour strategizing, discussing various scenarios for the upcoming Boston summit. As midnight approached, a soft beep sounded on Isabella's phone. She glanced at the screen, an email with the official agenda for the summit. Her name was listed alongside Marcus's for a high-profile panel. The reality of their impending reunion felt more concrete than ever. Slipping her phone into her pocket, she walked over to the window. Raindrops streaked the glass, distorting the vibrant lights of the city. In that moment, she understood there would be no turning back. The summit would force her to confront Marcus head-on. A faint determination stirred within her, mingling with lingering doubts. She recalled how powerless she once felt in his presence, yet time had reshaped her into someone far more capable. She stood there for a while, watching the glow of headlights weaving through the rainy streets below. The city seemed restless, pulsing with life even at this late hour. She couldn't escape the sense that her own life was on the brink of a significant change, one that would challenge her convictions, test her resolve, and possibly redefine her future. In the early morning light, Isabella's penthouse apartment felt strangely still. She gazed at the faint outlines of Manhattan's skyline through her living room windows, the sounds of traffic muffled by the thick glass. After another restless night, she sipped a cup of black tea, hoping it would calm her anxious thoughts about the looming Boston summit. A gentle chime on her phone broke the silence. It was an incoming call from someone she hadn't heard from in a while. Dr. Harriet Coleman. Harriet had been among the first to invest in Isabella's fledgling tech startup years ago. A retired Harvard professor, Harriet was in her early 60s, an imposing woman with graying curls, a clipped academic accent, and a sharp, empathetic mind. She had offered Isabella not just capital, but also intellectual guidance, sharing her years of experience in business ethics and leadership. Despite the time that had passed since they'd last spoken, Harriet's voice carried the same warmth, Isabella remembered. "Isabella, darling," Harriet began, "I've been reading about you in the papers. They say you've become quite a powerhouse in the tech world. Must say I'm pleased and not at all surprised." Isabella smiled, setting her cup on the table. "You gave me a chance when no one else did, Harriet. I owe so much of my progress to your early faith in me." "Nonsense," Harriet replied. "You did all the hard work. I just recognized the spark in you. And now, from what I gather, you have a big summit coming up where you'll be face to face with your ex-husband." Isabella couldn't hide a sigh. "Yes, Marcus Reynolds. He's in trouble financially, it seems, but I can't discount the possibility he'll pull some sort of stunt. The industry is buzzing with rumors." Harriet's silence lasted a moment. Then she spoke gently. "Let's meet for lunch today. I'm back in New York for a short while, and I think it's time we caught up properly." A few hours later, Isabella arrived at an upscale restaurant in Midtown. Harriet was already seated at a table near the window, wearing a neatly pressed blazer and a thoughtful expression. After exchanging a warm hug, they settled in, ordered light meals, and began discussing the complexities Isabella was facing. "I'm worried that any move I make could be interpreted as either hostility or weakness," Isabella admitted. "If I refuse to engage with Marcus, people might say I'm allowing personal grudges to interfere with business. But if I do engage, I risk letting him manipulate me or undermine all that I've worked for." Harriet picked up her water glass, peering at Isabella over the rim. "Being decisive is rarely about eliminating all risks. It's about recognizing which risk aligns best with your integrity and long-term vision." She paused, setting the glass down. "You've always been grounded in fairness, even when you were struggling. Don't let fear push you to become someone you're not." Their waiter arrived, delivering a salad for Harriet and a grilled salmon dish for Isabella. As Harriet sprinkled pepper on her greens, she inquired about the emotional toll. "I recall that your divorce was particularly brutal. How are you holding up inside?" Isabella felt a knot in her stomach. "I can't deny old wounds are surfacing. I've come to terms with how Marcus treated me, but the memories are still painful. Sometimes I wonder if I've truly healed or just buried the hurt deep." Harriet reached across the table, gently patting Isabella's hand. "Healing isn't a single event. It's a journey. Marcus may stir those old hurts, but you have the freedom to respond differently now. He no longer decides your worth. You do." Isabella let Harriet's words sink in. She remembered the early days, sleeping on a friend's couch because she had nowhere else to go after Marcus left. How Harriet's belief in her ideas gave her the courage to pursue an MBA at night, juggling multiple jobs to pay for tuition. That unwavering support fueled a determination she hadn't known she possessed. When they finished their lunch, Harriet insisted on taking care of the bill. "A small gesture of thanks," she said, "for all the pride and joy you've brought me as your mentor. Now, promise me you'll keep me in the loop. I'd love to see you navigate this summit with the same grace and grit that brought you here." Stepping out onto the busy sidewalk, Isabella felt lighter. Harriet's perspective gave her a clearer path forward. She resolved to face the Boston summit without letting bitterness taint her decisions. If Marcus tried to strong-arm her, she would remain resolute in her morals and self-respect. She had come too far to compromise her integrity now. Before parting ways, Harriet offered one final piece of wisdom. "Remember, your success is not just a shield, it's a testament to who you've become. Facing Marcus isn't about revenge. It's about reminding yourself, and perhaps even him, that the woman he discarded is stronger than he ever imagined." Those words echoed in Isabella's thoughts long after Harriet disappeared into the afternoon crowd. She stood still for a moment, letting the city's vitality wash over her. The image of Marcus hovering in her future felt less daunting with Harriet's encouragement. There would still be twists and turns ahead, but she felt a renewed confidence taking root, a confidence she knew she would need when the real challenges began. As the days rushed by, Isabella found herself poring over itineraries and emails regarding the Boston summit. She had delegated more day-to-day tasks to her executive team so she could focus on strategic planning. Torres Innovations' glass-walled offices glimmered under bright fluorescent lights as staff moved with a sense of purpose. The looming event had everyone on high alert, yet there was an undercurrent of excitement, as if they were on the brink of a grand opportunity. Late one afternoon, Isabella called for an all-hands meeting. Dozens of employees filled the main conference room, which boasted floor-to-ceiling windows framing the bustling city outside. Some looked eager, others slightly nervous, but all faced Isabella with admiration. She stood at the head of the room, scanning the faces of software developers, marketing managers, financial analysts, people who had chosen to believe in her vision. "Thank you all for joining me," she began, her voice echoing softly against the glass walls. "As you know, the summit in Boston is fast approaching. Our participation there isn't just about discussing mergers or acquisitions. It's about showing the tech community who we are and what we stand for." She noticed Sonia Patel, standing near the door, nodding with quiet confidence. Alicia was seated in the front row, arms folded, an encouraging smile on her face. David, Isabella's efficient assistant, took notes on a tablet while glancing up periodically. "We've come a long way," Isabella continued. "Torres Innovations was once just me in a tiny co-working space. Now we're a recognized name. I want you all to remember that we've earned our place at the table. No matter what stories or rumors float around, we act with integrity, transparency, and respect for one another." A brief round of applause followed, and Isabella concluded by outlining the travel arrangements for those attending the summit. She reiterated the importance of staying calm under any media pressure or surprise announcements. Then she opened the floor to questions. A marketing associate raised her hand. "Ms. Torres, there's speculation about our potential dealings with Reynolds Corporation. Should we be worried about negative press?" Isabella forced a reassuring smile, though she couldn't banish the knot of anxiety in her stomach. "I won't deny that the rumor mill is working overtime, but we won't confirm or deny anything until we have real facts. Our mission remains the same: build meaningful, ethical innovations. Keep that in mind if reporters approach you. Emphasize our values and our progress." After the meeting ended, Isabella retreated to her office. Alicia and Sonia followed, closing the door behind them. Isabella sank into her leather chair, feeling an odd mix of resolve and unease. She glanced at the boxes piled by the wall, filled with conference materials and promotional items for the summit. Each box bore the sleek Torres Innovations logo that once existed only in her imagination. Alicia perched on the edge of the desk. "How are you feeling? You're about to step away from the usual routines and head into a lion's den of corporate sharks." Isabella sighed. "Part of me wants to stay behind these glass walls, keep doing what we do best without the drama. But I know that avoiding this won't help us grow, and it won't help me move on from the past." Sonia nodded. "You're making the right call, confronting these challenges head-on. We'll be with you every step of the way." They spent the next hour reviewing the summit's schedule, discussing possible scenarios if Marcus tried to corner Isabella or if the media pushed too hard for a story. The weight of departing her comfortable routine for something uncertain pressed on Isabella's shoulders, but Harriet's words about standing in her truth kept echoing in her mind. As the evening light faded, Isabella stood in the now empty conference room, gazing out at the sparkling city. Her reflection in the glass reminded her of the journey she had taken. From a timid, uncertain wife to a decisive leader commanding respect in a competitive field, she thought about how, in just a few days, she'd be in Boston, surrounded by rivals, potential allies, and one man in particular who had once shattered her belief in herself. David peeked into the room. "Ms. Torres, everything's set for your departure tomorrow. Is there anything else you need?" She turned, offering a grateful nod. "No, thank you, David. Just make sure the final itinerary is emailed to me, and get some rest. I know you've been working late." As David left, Isabella took one last look at the Manhattan skyline. Her old routine, late nights, comfortable work rhythms, the relative stability of leading her team from home base, was about to be left behind for a much more unpredictable environment. She needed to trust that the confidence she'd gained over the years would guide her through whatever confrontations lay ahead. The grand lobby of the Boston Convention Center bustled with hundreds of professionals from around the globe. Tall glass walls revealed a backdrop of the city's historic seaport, and the hum of voices mingled with the clicking of heels on polished floors. Isabella stepped inside with her team, feeling a surge of adrenaline. She wore a tailored charcoal grey suit that balanced formality and understated elegance, reflecting the gravitas of the summit. Sonia walked beside her, scanning the crowd. "They've upgraded us to a prime booth location," she said, pointing to a map on her tablet. "We'll have more foot traffic than expected." Isabella nodded. "That's good. Let's make sure we're ready to showcase everything Torres Innovations is working on." Alicia followed a step behind, tugging her rolling suitcase over the marble floor. Her usually calm demeanor was tinged with excitement. "Look at the scale of this event. Every major player in tech is here." She paused, lowering her voice. "And so is Reynolds Corporation. I saw some of their staff near the registration desk." Isabella felt her stomach tense. She brushed off the sensation and guided her team toward the check-in area. Crowds parted as they walked, some people recognizing Isabella and greeting her with polite smiles or curious glances. She was no longer the timid figure once overshadowed by her ex-husband. Yet the magnitude of the occasion and the possibility of a public confrontation with Marcus brought a familiar strain. Once her team finished registration, they moved to their designated booth in the main exhibition hall. Rows of sleek displays lined the space, each booth featuring cutting-edge technology solutions. Torres' innovation section was bright and inviting, showcasing interactive demos of their newest platform. As technicians arranged hardware and polished screens, Isabella looked around, absorbing the energy. Several heads turned in her direction, possibly linking her face with the stories swirling in the media about her potential face-off with Marcus. A soft voice startled her. "Isabella Torres, right?" A woman in a pinstripe suit extended her hand, introducing herself as Elaine Parker, a journalist covering the summit for a major financial outlet. "I'm hoping to get your perspective on the current merger buzz. How do you foresee the market shifting, especially for companies like Reynolds Corporation?" Isabella inhaled slowly, choosing her words. "The tech landscape is evolving faster than ever. I can't speak for Reynolds Corporation, but I believe companies that prioritize agility and ethical innovation will come out on top." Elaine's eyes glinted with interest. "Any chance you'll partner with Reynolds or consider a joint venture?" Trying not to appear flustered, Isabella offered a measured smile. "We're open to mutually beneficial partnerships, but it's premature to discuss specifics." Before Elaine could press further, Sonia intervened with a polite reminder that Isabella had a packed schedule. The journalist gave a gracious nod, promising to connect again soon. Once she left, Alicia breathed a sigh of relief. "The media is circling like hawks. We need to stay on our toes." By late afternoon, the main floor had filled with representatives from well-known tech giants and smaller startups alike. Isabella recognized faces from previous conferences, some supportive, some competitive. They exchanged polite greetings, each conversation tinged with underlying curiosity about her potential moves regarding Marcus. She gracefully dodged prying questions, focusing on promoting Torres Innovations. In a brief lull between demos, Sonia's phone buzzed with an incoming text. She checked it, eyes widening. "It's from James Holloway, the former financial analyst who first alerted you to Marcus's situation. He says he's here and he has critical information to share immediately." Isabella tensed. "Can he meet us at the cafe area in the next wing?" "It's quieter there." A few minutes later, She and Sonia slipped away from their booth, weaving through the crowded corridors until they reached a small lounge with modern seating and soft lighting. James was waiting at a corner table, clutching a worn leather briefcase. His usually composed face looked grim. "Thank you for coming," he said, standing to greet them. "I realize this summit is a whirlwind, but you need to see these files. I've been uncovering more details about Reynolds Corporation's financial strategies, and it's worse than I initially suspected. There might be evidence of Marcus manipulating offshore accounts." Sonia exchanged a tense glance with Isabella. "And you're certain it's tied directly to Marcus?" "Yes, but the proof is delicate," James replied. "If it goes public, it could destroy what's left of Reynolds Corporation." Isabella folded her arms, torn between discomfort and caution. "Why bring it to me?" James sighed. "Because I sense you're the only one with both the integrity and influence to stop him, or at least keep this from turning into a scandal that jeopardizes innocent employees. I also know you have a personal stake in how this unfolds." His words hung in the air, forcing Isabella to confront the reality of what might be at stake. The swirl of activity around them seemed to heighten the tension. She felt a mixture of moral responsibility and a lingering urge to see justice served. Yet she also recognized the danger in relying solely on data from a single source. As she listened to James outline the details, she couldn't shake the realization that she was no longer merely reacting to Marcus's moves. She had information that could shape the future of their mutual industries and possibly destroy the man who once tried to destroy her. After parting ways with James Holloway, Isabella and Sonia navigated the corridors leading back to the bustling exhibition hall. The magnitude of the situation weighed on them. Isabella felt her heart hammering, uncertain whether she should confront Marcus directly about the new allegations or keep the intel to herself until she found more substantial proof. They arrived at their booth to see Alicia finalizing a product demo for a group of intrigued visitors. Catching sight of Isabella and Sonia's return, Alicia politely excused herself and walked over. "Everything okay? You both look like you've seen a ghost." Sonia recounted James's claims, and Alicia's eyes widened with concern. "That's serious. We need to be extremely careful how we handle this." Isabella nodded, scanning the crowd as if expecting Marcus to appear at any moment. Instead, a friendly face emerged, a woman around Sonia's age, with short, stylish hair and keen eyes. She approached the booth, wearing a conference badge that read Samantha Brooks, CEO, Brooks Solutions. Isabella recognized the name from a recent press release. Brooks Solutions was renowned for its user-focused software that complemented much of what Torres Innovations did. "Ms. Torres, I'm Samantha. We haven't met formally, but I've followed your work for years," Samantha said, extending her hand. "Your approach to bridging technology and real human needs is inspiring." Isabella smiled, taking the offered hand. "I appreciate that. I've heard great things about Brooks Solutions. I especially admire your commitment to accessible design." Samantha nodded, glancing over at the Torres Innovations displays. "Your user-centered tech philosophy aligns with ours. I've been hoping to chat with you about a potential collaboration." Intrigued, Isabella gestured for Alicia and Sonia to join them, and the group stepped a few feet away from the crowds for a more private conversation. Samantha explained how her company was developing a new platform that would dovetail perfectly with Torres Innovations' current offerings. "We're a smaller firm," she admitted, "but we're nimble. We could join forces on certain projects, maybe share resources." It was the kind of discussion that stirred excitement in Isabella. Collaboration based on shared values felt far more rewarding than forced mergers. She exchanged glances with Alicia and Sonia, both of whom gave her encouraging nods. "I'd love to explore this further," Isabella said. Maybe after the official summit sessions end today, we could find a quiet spot to talk, Samantha agreed, and they exchanged contact information. As she walked away, Alicia couldn't hide her enthusiasm. This could be the kind of partnership that strengthens our portfolio without compromising our ethics. Sonia's voice was more subdued, still preoccupied with the bombshell James Holloway had dropped. Yes, it sounds promising. But we also need to figure out what to do about Marcus. Hoping to gather her thoughts, Isabella decided a short break was in order. She asked Alicia to keep an eye on the booth, then slipped outside through a side exit leading to a small terrace overlooking the harbor. The cool breeze off the water and the distant sound of boats offered a brief escape from the convention frenzy. She leaned against a railing, letting the wind soothe her nerves. A soft voice broke her solitude. "Mind if I join you?" It was Samantha, appearing with a cup of coffee in hand. I needed some fresh air myself. Isabella welcomed her presence, finding Samantha's calm demeanor reassuring. They chatted lightly about the summit, about how overwhelming it could be to stand among corporate giants. Samantha mentioned her own experiences feeling overshadowed by big-name CEOs who lacked the personal touch she considered vital. Isabella nodded, empathizing with the notion of fighting to be heard in such a competitive arena. Eventually, Samantha asked more about Torres Innovations' origins. Isabella recounted, in guarded detail, how she had been belittled and brushed aside in her past. Though she didn't name Marcus outright, the pain in her voice made it clear that this experience was foundational to her drive and vision. Samantha listened intently, leaning on the railing, her expression reflecting genuine empathy. "You've come a long way," Samantha said softly. "I can tell you're not just in this for profit." "Profit is good," Isabella replied with a tight smile. "But it's never been my main goal. I want to build something lasting, something that helps people. Which is why your idea of a collaboration intrigues me." They chatted a bit longer, exchanging thoughts on the tech industry's shift toward more people-centric solutions. Isabella found the conversation surprisingly comforting, as if she'd stumbled onto an ally who understood the pressures and moral dilemmas of her world. It was a welcome relief after days of worrying about Marcus. Just for a moment, she allowed herself to imagine a future where her company aligned with firms like Brooks Solutions, championing responsible innovation without the fear of sabotage or betrayal. A sudden gust of wind reminded them of the time, and they decided to return to the main hall. Before they parted ways, Samantha offered a small smile. "If things get complicated, or if you need someone to talk to about any of this, don't hesitate to call me. The tech world is big, but we don't have to be alone in it." Isabella thanked her, genuinely moved by the offer. In a sea of corporate rivalries, discovering potential allies felt like finding a safe harbor. She just hoped this glimmer of positivity wouldn't be overshadowed by the storm she sensed brewing around Marcus's next move. Late in the evening, the main exhibition hall emptied out, replaced by a quieter hum as maintenance crews tidied up. Most attendees had scattered to after-parties or industry dinners around Boston's upscale venues. Isabella, however, chose to remain at the Torres Innovations booth, reviewing data from the day's interactions. She wore flats instead of the heels she had started with, her feet still aching from hours on the showroom floor. Alicia and Sonia joined her at a small round table set up at the corner of their booth. Alicia handed Isabella a bottle of water, then plopped into a folding chair. "We did well today," she began, her voice tinged with both pride and exhaustion. "Plenty of potential leads, including that collaboration with Brooks Solutions." Sonia nodded, tugging off her lanyard. "And the media interviews were fairly tame. No one cornered us about Reynolds Corporation. At least not aggressively." Isabella managed a grateful smile. "You both handled questions gracefully." It's a relief not to be hounded by scandal rumors the entire time. Still, the knowledge from James Holloway lingered in her mind. If the allegations about Marcus were true, it wouldn't be long before the press caught wind and turned it into front-page news. She wondered if she should disclose the intel to Alicia and Sonia, but she held back for now, unsure of the best course. Just then, Samantha Brooks approached with a friendly wave, carrying a cardboard tray of coffee cups. "I figured you could use a pick-me-up," she joked, setting them down. Everyone else left to enjoy the nightlife. "I saw your lights were still on, so I thought I'd check in." Alicia gratefully took a cup. "Bless you, I was about to pass out." Sonia introduced herself properly, shaking Samantha's hand. "Thanks for the caffeine fix." "We were discussing how the day went." Samantha sat, pulling an extra chair closer. "If it's not too forward, I'd love to hear more about your vision for Torres Innovations. I know about your products, but I want to understand the heart behind them." Isabella leaned back, somewhat guarded but still open to conversation. She described the ethos of Torres Innovations, developing technology that bridges gaps in healthcare access, educational tools, and practical solutions for underserved communities. "I grew up in a working-class neighborhood, so I know how often people are overlooked by flashy tech solutions that only cater to the wealthy," she explained. "At our core, we want to empower everyday individuals." Samantha's eyes lit up. "That resonates with what I'm doing at Brooks Solutions. We're building software that makes complex tasks simple for people with minimal tech experience. For me, it's about leveling the playing field." Alicia chimed in, outlining how partnerships could bring their respective visions to life more rapidly. "The synergy is there. We share values and complementary product lines. The question is, do we have the bandwidth to make it happen?" Isabella stared at the coffee cup in her hands. "We've been preparing for an expansion that aligns with our moral compass. If we do this together, I want it to be more than just a handshake deal. We should create a framework that ensures we stay true to our shared ideals." Samantha nodded. "I agree. Let's keep talking over the next few days. Maybe we can sketch out a collaborative proposal." The conversation drifted toward personal stories. Samantha spoke of being underestimated by her male counterparts in Silicon Valley, while Alicia mentioned the skepticism Isabella initially faced after her divorce. Sonia recalled how she fought to convince her family that tech was a viable career path for a woman. Each anecdote underscored the resilience shared by everyone around that small table. Isabella found herself relaxing, even laughing at times, a welcome release from the anxiety she'd been carrying. It felt good to be among people who understood that success wasn't handed to them, that they'd had to fight for every inch of progress. These were not empty corporate suits concerned solely with profit margins. They lingered until a staff member announced the hall was closing for the night. Standing up, Isabella experienced a wave of relief, tinged with excitement. Despite the tension surrounding Marcus, the day had revealed something vital. She was not alone. There were allies who shared her convictions, who believed in building a better industry. Samantha offered a smile as they parted ways. "Let's make tomorrow just as productive, if not more. We can discuss potential next steps whenever you're ready." After Samantha left, Alicia and Sonia helped Isabella pack up some materials. They agreed to meet again in the morning to finalize the day's presentations. As they walked out, the halls dark and nearly empty, Isabella felt the unfamiliar yet comforting weight of solidarity. Allies and empathy, she realized, were just as powerful as any corporate contract. Outside the convention center, the night air was cool and bracing. A few stars peeked through the haze of city lights. She wondered if Marcus was somewhere nearby, plotting his next move, but for once, the thought didn't paralyze her. She had found new confidence, new possibilities, and fresh resolve. It was enough to keep her moving forward, no matter what waited around the next corner. The following morning, the tension in the Boston Convention Center was palpable. Day 2 of the summit promised keynote speeches from high-profile executives and panel discussions that could shape the tech world for years to come. Isabella had just finished setting up some new demos at the Torres Innovations booth when she noticed a sudden hush wash over the crowd nearby. Marcus Reynolds was making his way through the main aisle, surrounded by a small entourage. He wore an impeccable navy suit and carried himself with the confidence of a man used to commanding attention. Even from several yards away, Isabella could see faint creases of stress etched into his features, signs that rumors of his financial troubles were not just idle gossip. Alicia and Sonia exchanged wary looks. Alicia whispered, "He's heading this way." Isabella drew a steadying breath. Her heart pounded, but she stood her ground. She refused to cower behind her display or slip into the background. If Marcus intended to speak with her, she would face him openly. She was no longer the timid spouse he once mocked. Marcus's gaze locked on her as he approached. His entourage hung back, allowing him to close the distance alone. For a moment, he said nothing, simply taking in her booth and the prominent Torres Innovations banner behind her. At last, he extended a hand, his voice measured. "It's been a long time, Isabella." She accepted the handshake, forcing herself to maintain composure. "Yes, it has. I wasn't sure you'd be attending, given the recent talk about your company's situation." A flicker of irritation crossed his face, but he hid it quickly. "One should never believe everything one hears. Reynolds Corporation remains strong, and I'm here to explore partnerships." Sonia cleared her throat, stepping forward in a subtle show of support. "We have a busy schedule, Mr. Reynolds. If you need a moment with Ms. Torres, perhaps it's best arranged in a private meeting room." Marcus offered a tight smile. "A private meeting would be ideal, but I didn't want to intrude without giving you time to prepare. Shall we schedule something for later today, Isabella?" Despite the swirl of emotions inside her, Isabella kept her voice steady. "That might be best. I'm speaking on a panel this afternoon, but we can find a time afterward." Marcus inclined his head, looking forward to it. With a final glance around, he turned and walked away, his entourage reforming around him like a protective shield. Once he was out of earshot, Alicia let out a whispered exclamation. "I'm impressed you didn't flinch. That was intense." Isabella shrugged, swallowing hard. "I can't let him see my nerves. He's testing me, seeing if I'll crack under pressure." Sonia leaned in. "Let's be strategic. That private meeting could be a trap, or it could be an opportunity to figure out what he's planning." The hours that followed moved in a blur of presentations, networking, and side discussions. Isabella spoke confidently on a morning panel alongside Samantha Brooks, highlighting their shared interest in ethical innovation. The audience responded positively, and even a few journalists approached afterwards to praise the forward-thinking angle they took. Yet no matter how well the day progressed, Isabella's thoughts kept returning to the impending conversation with Marcus. Finally, late in the afternoon, she received a text from Marcus's assistant confirming a meeting in a small conference room at the far end of the building. Isabella informed Alicia and Sonia, insisting they remain on standby in case things took an unexpected turn. Alicia offered to accompany her, but Isabella gently refused, wanting to show Marcus she wasn't intimidated. When Isabella arrived at the designated room, Marcus was already inside, standing by a window that overlooked the busy street below. The hush of the closed door made the spacious room feel oddly claustrophobic. Marcus turned, greeting her with a guarded nod. "Thank you for agreeing to meet," he said, his tone crisp. "I'll be brief. You've probably heard rumors that Reynolds Corporation is struggling, and I won't deny it's been a challenging quarter, but I have a proposal that might benefit us both." Isabella crossed her arms. Let's hear it. Marcus began outlining an elaborate plan to merge a portion of his operations with Torres Innovations in exchange for an injection of capital and access to Isabella's advanced tech solutions. He spoke as though they were long-time partners rather than ex-spouses with a painful history. Isabella listened intently, mentally noting where the plan seemed more like a desperate move than a well-thought-out business strategy. "I can offer you significant equity," Marcus said, trying to sound confident. "This wouldn't just help me, it would expand your market share exponentially." Isabella's gaze narrowed. "And what about the rumors of offshore accounts and questionable financial dealings?" She watched carefully, noting the flicker of alarm in his eyes. Marcus let out a short laugh that didn't quite reach his lips. "Stories like that crop up whenever someone is on the verge of a major deal. It's nonsense spread by competitors looking to weaken my position." She wasn't convinced. The memory of James Holloway's files weighed heavily on her mind. But she decided not to reveal what she knew just yet. Instead, she asked, "Why should I trust you?" He hesitated, a hint of raw honesty slipping through his polished exterior. "Because you know me, Isabella, better than anyone else here. And deep down, you must realize we can accomplish more together than apart. You've risen high on your own merits. Imagine what we could do if we combined forces." She thought back to their marriage, how he'd once made her feel small and incapable of real success. Now he stood here, almost pleading for her help. She couldn't deny the twisted sense of triumph coursing through her veins. Still, she refused to let old emotions cloud her judgment. Marcus watched her closely. "Take some time. Think it over. If you have questions, I'll be available." Isabella forced a polite nod, though her insides churned with questions. She exited the room, her heart pounding. The first confrontation with Marcus had been surprisingly civil, yet the undercurrents of tension were unmistakable. She couldn't tell if he was being sincere or simply cornered and desperate. As she made her way back toward the main floor, she realized the stakes had escalated. What she chose to do next could shape not only her own destiny, but the fate of countless people tied to both companies. Isabella barely slept after her meeting with Marcus. The possibility of a formal partnership with the man who once underestimated her hung heavy in her thoughts. She rose early the next morning, slipping into a tailored blazer before heading downstairs to the conference center lobby. Overhead, the lights cast a muted glow on polished floors. Attendees crisscrossed in a river of business suits, murmuring about the day's sessions. She found Alicia and Sonia huddled near a coffee kiosk, scanning the event schedule on a tablet. Alicia lifted her gaze the moment she saw Isabella. "You look like you barely closed your eyes." Isabella accepted the latte Sonia offered. "I didn't," she admitted. "Marcus wants a major deal, but I can't shake the feeling he's desperate and hiding something more than just shaky finances." Sonia tucked a strand of dark hair behind her ear. "We still have those documents from James Holloway. If even half of that information is accurate, Marcus might be sitting on a house of cards." "Exactly," Isabella replied. She sipped her coffee, the warmth a fleeting comfort. "There's too much at stake for us to rush into anything. But ignoring him completely could push him to do something reckless." Alicia tapped the screen on the tablet, pulling up the day's panel listings. "We have back-to-back sessions, but Harriet Coleman texted, asking if you have time for lunch. Maybe you could get her advice on how to handle Marcus's proposal." Isabella felt a wave of relief at Harriet's name. "She always seems to show up when I'm at a crossroads. Let's see if we can slip away from the summit for an hour." The first few sessions of the day tested Isabella's composure. She delivered a talk on tech innovation for underserved communities, highlighting Torres Innovations' latest software developments. The audience responded with rapt attention, and she fielded questions about practical applications for seniors, low-income families, and rural areas lacking reliable internet. Even as applause followed, her mind danced around Marcus's proposition. Later, as she left the stage, a small group of reporters cornered her with questions. "Mrs. Torres, have you seen the rumors on financial blogs stating you might buy a portion of Reynolds Corporation?" asked a young journalist holding a recorder. Isabella steadied her voice. "I've seen the speculation. We always explore potential deals that align with our mission, but there's nothing concrete I can comment on." The reporters pressed for more details, but Isabella smiled and repeated her response. She then excused herself, making her way to the exit with Sonia by her side. The swirling excitement around potential mergers felt suffocating, yet she knew better than to show doubt or fear. By midday, she and Alicia caught a taxi to a nearby hotel restaurant. Harriet waited for them at a quiet table by a window overlooking a small courtyard garden. She greeted them warmly, her silver curls framing a face that radiated both kindness and shrewd intelligence. "I've been following the conference news," Harriet said once they were seated. "People are buzzing about you and Marcus. Care to fill me in on how things really stand?" Isabella recounted the private meeting, the unnerving sense that Marcus was both contrite and manipulative. She also alluded to James Holloway's allegations without revealing too many details. Harriet listened intently, occasionally sipping her tea. "I see," Harriet murmured when Isabella finished. "Marcus is cornered. You hold the power, and he knows it. But if you're not careful, he could spin the narrative to make it seem like you're forcing him into a bad deal. That's what men in his position do when they're desperate. They twist facts for sympathy or leverage." Alicia leaned forward. "Harriet, do you think Isabella should publicly distance herself from Marcus until we know the truth?" Harriet considered the question. "That's one option. But stepping away publicly might escalate matters if he interprets it as hostility. Another path is to quietly investigate further. Gather indisputable evidence of any wrongdoing. Then if you choose to negotiate, you'll do so from a place of absolute certainty." Isabella exhaled, her shoulders sagging slightly. "I want to do what's right, not just what's profitable. This is bigger than a typical business deal. It's personal, and it could affect hundreds, maybe thousands of employees." Harriet nodded. "Remember, you can maintain empathy without sacrificing your principles. The series of trials you're facing aren't just about the corporate world. They're testing your moral compass." As the waiter cleared their plates, Harriet left them with a final piece of advice. Find your center of gravity, that unshakable part of yourself that no betrayal or crisis can uproot. Negotiate from there. Returning to the convention center, Isabella felt both bolstered and burdened. Harriet's wisdom validated her doubts about Marcus, yet she knew that each passing hour brought more scrutiny. She would have to face more questions, more demands, and more swirling rumors. She found herself caught between the loyalty she felt toward her employees and the lingering, complicated emotions she still had for the man she once loved. But if this summit had taught her anything, it was that she wasn't alone in the fight. She had allies, Alicia, Sonia, Harriet, and even Samantha Brooks, who seemed genuinely eager to collaborate. Each challenge felt like another rung on a ladder she had to climb. And though the distance to the top seemed daunting, she realized she was far from the woman who once felt powerless in Marcus's shadow. She was ready, even if she had to face more trials before finding the path that best served her conscience and her company's future. Late that afternoon, Isabella slipped into a small lounge area tucked away from the bustling corridors of the conference. The hush in the space was a welcome contrast to the noisy main hall. Tired from back-to-back presentations and networking sessions, she sank into a plush armchair. A single lamp provided a soft glow against the dark wood paneling, and the subdued lighting gave her the illusion of temporary solitude. Alicia joined her, quietly handing over a bottle of water. "You've been going non-stop. The entire convention seems to want your attention." "I feel pulled in 100 directions," Isabella admitted, uncapping the bottle. She took a long drink and ran her free hand over her forehead. "Between the interviews, the booth demos, Harriet's advice, and Marcus's proposition, I'm struggling to keep my emotions in check." Alicia frowned. "Marcus is the real stressor, isn't he? You've handled worse business challenges, but this one comes wrapped in old wounds." Isabella stared at the floor, her thoughts drifting back to the life she once shared with Marcus. While the marriage had ended painfully, there had been moments of genuine happiness. Road trips through the New England countryside, inside jokes only they understood, small gestures of affection. She wondered how much of that had been real and how much had been overshadowed by his ambition and her own insecurities. "It's not just him," Isabella said finally, her voice subdued. "It's the moral question of whether I should help bail out someone who abandoned me when I needed support the most, or if I should walk away and let him face the consequences of his choices." Alicia listened carefully. "What does your heart say?" A bitter laugh escaped Isabella's lips. "My heart is conflicted. Part of me thinks letting him fail might serve as poetic justice. But then I remember the good employees at Reynolds Corporation, people who had nothing to do with his decisions. They could lose their jobs if the company collapses." Footsteps echoed in the hallway, and Sonia appeared in the entrance, tablet in hand. She paused, sensing the gravity in the room. "Sorry to interrupt," she said softly, "but the panel you're speaking on is about to start. The session is called Sustainable Mergers in a Turbulent Economy. Marcus is also listed as a panelist. I thought you'd want to know." Isabella sighed, hoisting herself from the chair. Alicia and Sonia flanked her like supportive pillars as they made their way to the conference room hosting the panel. The stage was set with a row of chairs and microphones beneath bright lights. A moderate crowd, including several journalists, filled the seats. When she stepped up onto the stage, Isabella noticed Marcus sitting at the far end, engaged in small talk with another speaker. Their eyes met briefly, and though he wore a polished mask of confidence, she caught a hint of unease. The moderator, a seasoned economist, greeted everyone and kicked off the discussion with a series of questions about how companies can navigate economic downturns without compromising their principles. Isabella spoke thoughtfully about corporate responsibility, emphasizing that companies must consider the well-being of their workforce and the communities they serve. Samantha Brooks, seated next to Isabella, chimed in with examples of small firms that had defied market pressures through ethical business models. The mood was hopeful, even inspiring, until the moderator abruptly turned to Marcus. "Mr. Reynolds," the moderator began, "it's been reported that Reynolds Corporation is seeking a strategic partner due to financial setbacks. How do you reconcile that with your vision of sustainable growth?" Marcus cleared his throat. "Every business faces challenges. Ours is no different. I believe that with the right collaboration, we can not only recover but flourish. In truth, I've been in talks with several potential allies." A ripple of curiosity ran through the audience. The moderator glanced at Isabella. "Mr. Torres, might that include Torres Innovations?" A hot flush crept up Isabella's neck. She forced a cool tone. "We evaluate many proposals. If we find a partnership that aligns with our mission and ethical framework, we'll consider it." Marcus gave a faint smile. "And that's precisely what Reynolds Corporation aims for, a partnership founded on mutual respect." The tension was palpable. Samantha quickly pivoted the conversation to broader trends, but the air in the room felt charged. As the panel concluded, journalists swarmed the stage, firing off questions about a possible Torres-Reynolds deal. Isabella deflected politely, while Marcus offered slippery, non-committal answers that hinted at ongoing negotiations without confirming anything solid. Afterwards, Isabella slipped out a side door, her heartbeat racing. Alicia and Sonia hurried to catch up, but she waved them off, needing a moment alone. She made her way down a quiet hallway and found a seat on a bench near a display of historical photographs depicting Boston's harbor in the 19th century. The black and white images of old ships and wharves felt worlds away from the modern storm swirling around her. Her thoughts churned with self-doubt. Had she come across as weak or uncertain on stage? Did the audience sense the personal history complicating her judgment? In the echoing silence of that corridor, she realized her deepest conflict wasn't about business at all. It was about who she wanted to be in the face of someone who once shattered her sense of worth. And now, the entire industry seemed to be watching, waiting for her next move. Early the next morning, Isabella found a text message on her phone that made her blood run cold. "I have the proof you need. Meet me by the service exit at 7 a.m. It was from James Holloway, his tone urgent. She hurriedly dressed in a simple black sweater and slacks, then slipped out of her hotel room, avoiding the main elevator bank to dodge early-rising conference-goers. The service exit was down a narrow corridor at the rear of the convention center, near the loading docks. The overhead lights buzzed softly in the semi-deserted space, casting elongated shadows against industrial grey walls. James stepped forward, briefcase in hand, dark circles under his eyes. He looked more anxious than she'd ever seen him. "I have to be quick," he said, glancing around. "I pulled additional data from internal servers before I left Reynolds Corporation. It confirms offshore accounts, falsified asset reports, enough to sink Marcus if you choose to expose it." He handed over a slim USB drive. Isabella stared at it, her chest tight. "Why give this to me?" "Because it's the right thing to do," James answered, voice trembling. "I believed in Marcus once, but he's crossed too many lines. If the authorities find out on their own, it could be chaos for everyone. You're the only one who can decide how to handle it responsibly. Just be careful. Reynolds has powerful friends." Before she could ask more, he slipped away, leaving her alone in the stark corridor. A surge of adrenaline hit her. This was the smoking gun, the key to unmasking Marcus's deceptive practices. But the sheer magnitude of the discovery also weighed on her like a lead cloak. Releasing this information could trigger investigations, tarnish entire companies, and put thousands of jobs at risk. By the time she returned to her hotel suite, Alicia and Sonia were waiting, both visibly alarmed. "We've been texting you," Alicia said. "Where were you?" Isabella showed them the USB drive and explained James's revelations. Sonia paled. "This is bigger than we thought. If Marcus is involved in money laundering or fraud, it could spark a massive scandal." Alicia nodded. "Or a meltdown of investor confidence across multiple firms. Everyone connected to Marcus could feel the aftershocks." They sat at the small dining table, the USB drive resting between them like a loaded weapon. Isabella stared at it, recalling Harriet's words about maintaining empathy without sacrificing principles. What do we do? Turn this over to the SEC? Confront Marcus directly? Alicia tapped her foot nervously. "If we go public, it will look like you're personally orchestrating his downfall, possibly out of revenge. That could harm Torres Innovations' reputation, even if we're ethically in the right." Sonia folded her arms. "But if we keep it hidden, we become complicit in covering up illegal activity. That doesn't sit well with who we are as a company." Isabella massaged her temples. She felt stuck in a no-win scenario, an obstacle too massive and intricate to overcome without consequences. Her moral compass told her to do the right thing, But how to define right when so many lives could be affected? A sudden knock on the door made them jump. Alicia answered to find Samantha Brooks standing there, concern etched on her face. I heard rumors about an upcoming press leak regarding Reynolds Corporation. People are whispering that you have damaging info. Is that true? Isabella hesitated, then waved Samantha inside. She explained the basics without going into explicit detail. Samantha's expression grew grave. This could destabilize the entire sector if it goes nuclear. And if Marcus is truly guilty, well, it's going to be ugly, no matter what. A tense silence followed, each person lost in thought. Finally, Samantha placed a reassuring hand on Isabella's shoulder. I can't tell you what to do, but remember, your integrity is part of why we wanted to partner with you. If you handle this with honesty and transparency, people will recognize that. Isabella closed her eyes, breathing shakily. She was grateful for the support, yet it didn't remove the crushing sense of responsibility. Marcus had essentially placed her in a moral quagmire, and time was running out. The possibility of simply walking away from any deal with him felt too simplistic. The ethical question loomed large. Did she have an obligation to expose him? Or should she give him a chance to come clean on his own? Looking at the group gathered in her room, Isabella realized she wasn't alone. She had allies willing to stand beside her. Still, the weight of the decision fell on her shoulders. She was the one Marcus had wronged, the one who had the power to save him or see him crumble. And in this moment, the obstacle felt insurmountable, a twisting labyrinth of legal, moral, and emotional entanglements with no easy exit in sight. That afternoon, word spread that Isabella Torres would make an unscheduled appearance at a panel on corporate ethics. Rumors circulated that she possessed critical information regarding market integrity. Speculation ran rampant across social media and inside the conference halls. Attendees buzzed with excitement and nerves, packing the small auditorium where the panel was hastily convened. Standing backstage, Isabella clutched the USB drive in her hand. Alicia leaned in, whispering, "You sure about this? Whatever you say on that stage will set off a chain reaction." "I have to do something," Isabella replied, "but I won't reveal the specific evidence unless I absolutely must. I want to give Marcus a chance, however slim, to face the truth himself." The panel began, featuring legal experts, industry analysts, and a few CEOs. The moderator introduced Isabella, citing her reputation for ethical leadership. She stepped up to the podium, scanning the packed rows of spectators. Lights glared overhead, making it hard to see everyone's expressions, but she sensed a mixture of anticipation and skepticism. Her speech was brief but pointed. She spoke about the importance of transparency, the damage hidden financial manipulations could inflict on employees and consumers, and the long-term fallout for any company that put profit above accountability. She didn't name Marcus or Reynolds Corporation outright, yet her message was clear. There was no room in modern business for the kind of deception she alluded to. Once she finished, applause rippled through the crowd, some enthusiastic, others polite. Isabella stepped off stage, feeling a surge of relief. While she hadn't completely unleashed the details, her words served as a warning shot. If Marcus was watching, he'd know she was giving him a moment to do the right thing. In the hallway outside, Samantha Brooks caught up with her. "That was bold," Samantha said quietly. "You're drawing a line in the sand without starting a public war." "That's my hope," Isabella answered. She paused, noting movement in her peripheral vision. A figure stood near a pillar, arms folded. Marcus. He approached slowly, scanning the corridor to ensure they were relatively alone. Samantha offered a polite nod and stepped away to give them space. Isabella braced herself for confrontation, expecting accusations or anger. Instead, Marcus seemed weary, almost resigned. His shoulders sagged, and the confident spark in his eyes had dimmed. "You've made your stance clear," he said, voice low. "This is about what James told you, isn't it?" She didn't bother pretending otherwise. "Yes, I know everything, and so will others if you don't come clean." He gave a humorless laugh. "I suppose I should be grateful you didn't just air all my dirty laundry on that stage." Isabella fixed him with a steady gaze. "Believe it or not, I'm not here to destroy you. This is about doing what's right. You can't keep operating with false accounting and offshore shell games. It's immoral, and it's going to implode." Marcus glanced around, ensuring no bystanders could overhear. "I never intended for it to go this far. Early on, there were just small loopholes and tax shelters, common in business, though not exactly admirable. But the more the market shifted, the deeper I dug myself in. You always claimed to be above underhanded tactics," Isabella replied, a trace of bitterness creeping in. He ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair, mussing it slightly. "I justified it as protecting my employees, my shareholders. If you expose me fully, it'll all come crashing down." His voice wavered. "I'm not asking for pity, but consider the thousands of people who rely on Reynolds Corporation for their livelihood." Isabella felt her resolve falter. She had wanted to see him humbled, yet seeing the genuine fear in his eyes stirred an unexpected pang of empathy. "I've already considered them," she said quietly. "That's why I haven't gone public yet, but you need to step forward, Marcus. Cooperate with regulators, restructure your finances ethically, or close down gracefully. I can't be complicit in a cover-up." They stood in silence, the distant murmur of the conference echoing around them. Marcus exhaled slowly, as though the weight of every lie and half-truth pressed down on him at once. I'll think about it," he managed. "But I need time." Isabella nodded. "You don't have much." "The longer you wait, the worse it gets." She handed him a small card with her personal number. "If you decide to do the right thing, call me. Maybe we can find a solution that minimizes the damage." He accepted the card and walked away, shoulders stooped like a man carrying an invisible burden. Isabella watched him go, a tumult of emotions swirling inside her. This was a partial victory. She had confronted him, laid down the ultimatum, and preserved her own integrity. The world didn't yet know the full extent of Marcus's wrongdoing, but she had taken a crucial step toward forcing his hand. Returning to her own booth, she found Alicia, Sonia, and Samantha waiting in tense anticipation. They visibly relaxed when they saw her composed expression. Samantha offered a quiet nod, as if acknowledging the moral line Isabella had managed to hold. Alicia slipped her arm around Isabella's shoulders, whispering, "You did the best you could with an impossible situation." Isabella wanted to believe that. Though far from a complete resolution, she sensed she had reclaimed some control over a narrative Marcus once commandeered. Still, the path ahead remained uncertain. If Marcus chose pride over honesty, any semblance of victory might crumble. For now, she clung to a slender hope that he might do what was necessary to avert a total disaster, and in turn, spare her from making a choice she might forever regret. By the final day of the summit, the atmosphere crackled with anticipation. Whispers circulated that a major announcement was imminent. Some believed it involved Reynolds Corporation, others speculated about Torres innovations. Isabella could practically feel the eyes of the tech world, trained on her every move. Exhausted from restless nights and constant scrutiny, she gathered with Alicia, Sonia, and Samantha in a secluded corner near the conference's main auditorium. The group was there to finalize plans for a press briefing scheduled later that afternoon. Samantha, who joined forces with Torres Innovations on a few pilot projects, looked uneasy. My board of directors is wary about associating with you if Reynolds collapses. They're concerned about bad press or legal fallout. Alicia placed a comforting hand on Samantha's shoulder. We understand. It's a valid concern. But we can't let fear dictate our choices. Isabella's stance remains that we won't hide wrongdoing, nor will we sabotage someone out of spite. Sonia nodded. Whatever happens with Marcus, we'll stand by our principles. The conversation moved to the specifics of the press briefing, where Isabella and Samantha intended to unveil a collaborative initiative aimed at expanding tech access to underserved populations. The objective was to shift the narrative away from scandal and highlight positive developments. Yet every mention of Marcus's name cast a lingering shadow. A text alert chimed on Alicia's phone. She read it swiftly, her eyes widening. It's from Harriet Coleman. She wants to see you in the executive lounge upstairs. Says it's urgent. Isabella felt a swirl of concern. Harriet rarely used the word urgent. She excused herself from the group, took the elevator up, and found Harriet seated in a plush corner of the lounge, sipping hot tea. The windows provided a panoramic view of the city's skyline, though Harriet's usually bright demeanor appeared clouded with worry. "What's happened?" Isabella asked, sliding into the chair across from her mentor. Harriet sighed. "I've been speaking with some financial bigwigs who caught wind of your partial revelations about hidden accounts. The rumor is that a group of investors is pressuring Marcus to resign from his own company. They believe it might stabilize the situation before law enforcement or regulators get involved." Isabella absorbed the information, her heart pounding. Resign? That would be huge. Is he aware? "He must be by now," Harriet replied. "Time is running out for him to make a statement. And from what I've heard, if he doesn't come clean soon, they'll release evidence to the authorities themselves." A pit formed in Isabella's stomach. So that's it. He can either surrender or be forced out. Harriet set down her teacup. "You've done what you could, dear. Now he has to face the consequences of his actions. But this may blow up quickly, and you need to be ready to clarify your role." Isabella inhaled shakily. "I've tried giving him an opportunity to do the right thing. If he refuses, then the meltdown is out of my control." Harriet squeezed her hand. "Just remember who you are. Don't let guilt or old feelings deter you from speaking your truth if it comes to that." Leaving the lounge, Isabella felt as though she were ascending a steep cliff, every next step more precarious than the last. The central trial in her journey loomed, a test not only of her professional acumen, but of her integrity. Would she have to publicly condemn Marcus to protect her company, or would he defuse the crisis on his own? She returned to the auditorium, where the final presentations were wrapping up. A hush descended as Marcus Reynolds took the stage unannounced, stepping up to the microphone. Isabella stood at the back of the room, arms folded, her pulse thrumming in her ears. Marcus scanned the audience, his expression drawn. "I have a statement to make," he began, voice trembling slightly. "Recent speculation has questioned the financial practices of Reynolds Corporation. I won't pretend the company is without fault. Mistakes have been made, and for that, I accept responsibility." A ripple of surprise and relief moved through the crowd, though some remained skeptical. Marcus continued, "Effective immediately, I'm stepping down as CEO, and an internal review will commence. To our employees, shareholders, and the industry at large, I pledge transparency moving forward. We will address all concerns with regulators to ensure we comply fully with the law." Isabella watched, heart pounding. She noticed the slump of his shoulders, the humility in his tone. Whether this was genuine or calculated to minimize legal fallout remained unclear, but it was a major concession nonetheless. He was choosing to step aside rather than drag everyone down with him. The room erupted into a cacophony of murmurs and camera flashes. Marcus left the stage, ignoring the barrage of questions from reporters. Isabella found him in a side corridor moments later. Their eyes met in a silent exchange. Relief, regret, maybe even a flicker of understanding. She approached him cautiously. "That was the right move. I thank you for doing this before it got any uglier." His eyes were bloodshot. "I realized you were right. Carrying on this facade would have hurt too many people. Even if I'm too late to salvage my own reputation, at least the company can survive." They stood there, neither knowing what to say next. The empire he once glorified was now in shambles, but the employees and smaller investors would likely come out with fewer casualties thanks to his resignation. Isabella nodded, stepping back. "I respect you for taking responsibility." He gave a weary nod. "I guess we're both different people than we were a decade ago." With that, he turned and disappeared into a chaotic throng of reporters. The decisive moment had arrived, and though the path still stretched before her, Isabella felt an unexpected lightness in her chest. This central trial wasn't over, but at least the worst outcome might have been averted. She stepped away from the corridor, bracing herself for the wave of questions and clarifications she knew would follow. Yet somewhere underneath it all, she sensed a shift in her own story, a climb that had brought her one step closer to real closure. The Boston summit was winding down, yet tension still clung to the air like a stubborn fog. Most attendees had already packed their booths, but Isabella found herself in a private meeting room near the convention center's upper level. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city skyline, crimson and gold as the sun set. Her heart pounded at what was about to take place. A final meeting with Marcus Reynolds, this time with certain board members of the crumbling Reynolds Corporation present. Seated around a sleek glass table were three of Marcus's former top executives, each wearing grim expressions. Marcus himself had arrived alone and sat at the far end, his posture rigid. On Isabella's side, Alicia and Sonia stood quietly near the door for moral and professional support. The atmosphere felt charged with unspoken urgency. Marcus cleared his throat, breaking the uneasy silence. "I appreciate everyone agreeing to meet on short notice. My resignation has stabilized some of the company's finances, but there's more to address." An older executive, a gentleman named Bryce Miller, leaned forward. "Marcus, stepping down was necessary, but it's not enough. We need to talk restitution, accountability." Investors are clamoring for explanations. Marcus's jaw tightened. "I'm aware, and that's why I've asked Isabella here. She has insights that might help us salvage what's left." A delicate hush fell over the room. Isabella knew Marcus was still grappling with legal exposure, but apparently he wanted to propose a plan to keep Reynolds Corporation afloat. She took a breath, remembering Harriet's advice about negotiating from her own center of gravity. "I'm open to hearing your ideas, but you should all understand, my priority is protecting the integrity of Torres Innovations. I won't make deals that compromise my ethics or put my team at risk." Bryce nodded. "We understand. Honestly, we're at your mercy. Reynolds Corporation will likely enter a formal reorganization if we can't strike a lifeline deal." Marcus's gaze flicked to Isabella. "I'd like to propose that Torres Innovations partner with Reynolds on a transitional basis, helping maintain certain technology divisions and staff while we reorganize. In return, you'd gain access to our manufacturing and distribution channels." The hush that followed was heavy. Even Alicia and Sonia exchanged glances of disbelief. This was a massive request from a near-insolvent entity. Marcus was effectively asking Isabella to become a caretaker for key parts of the Reynolds empire. Isabella leaned forward, steadying her voice. "First, we need a full audit. Third-party verification of every financial statement. Second, The offshore accounts and questionable assets must be disclosed and rectified. My company cannot be entangled in hidden liabilities. Bryce exchanged a glance with the other executives, then nodded. A thorough audit is already in motion. We're prepared to be transparent as Marcus no longer has ultimate control. Marcus's expression was grim. I'll cooperate fully. I made mistakes, serious ones. I don't expect forgiveness, but I do hope we can prevent a total collapse. Isabella studied him carefully. A part of her still remembered the belittling comments and the emotional wounds. Another part recognized a man backed into a corner, finally humbled by his own ambition. If we do agree, she said slowly, it won't be a return to what was. I'll bring my own leadership, my own terms. Reynolds Corporation will have to accept new ways of operating. A flicker of bitterness crossed Marcus's face, but he conceded with a nod. I understand. Bryce's voice trembled with a mix of relief and desperation. Please, Ms. Torres, help us chart a path. Our employees, many of whom have families, are depending on a solution that doesn't leave them jobless. The next hour was a flurry of tentative plans and cautious optimism. They hammered out the broad strokes of a transitional partnership. Isabella insisted on robust compliance checks and the authority to oversee day-to-day operations in any joint venture. Marcus said little, often looking down at his folded hands. Meanwhile, the executives offered concessions that would have been unthinkable a few weeks ago. When they finally concluded, Bryce stood and shook Isabella's hand. Thank you. If this moves forward, you might be saving more than just a company. Alicia and Sonia led the board members out to begin immediate paperwork. That left Marcus and Isabella alone in the quiet conference room. The sunset bathed everything in warm orange light, a strangely comforting contrast to the tension still lingering. Marcus let out a heavy sigh. This is surreal. I never imagined I'd be asking you for a lifeline, especially after how I treated you. Isabella tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. It's not exactly the scenario I envisioned for our reunion, either. He gave a wry laugh. I was so certain of my path. Now that it's crumbled, I see I built my empire on a hollow foundation. I'm sorry, Isabella, for everything. She studied his face, searching for sincerity. His expression seemed genuine, though regret weighed heavily in his eyes. Still, she knew trust wouldn't be rebuilt in a single conversation. I appreciate the apology, but we'll have to see what actions follow. Words aren't enough anymore. Marcus nodded, understanding. I hope I can make amends, even if only by doing the right thing now. His voice held a quiet determination, a shadow of the man he once was, but different somehow, less arrogant, more reflective. Isabella nodded. We'll see, she repeated, then left the room, her footsteps echoing in the hushed space. Outside, Alicia and Sonia waited, each looking anxious and oddly hopeful. Isabella slipped the notebook filled with partnership notes under her arm and exhaled. The ultimate confrontation had taken place not in anger or vengeance, but in hard, necessary truths. The day after Marcus's resignation and the initial talk of a transitional partnership, Isabella found herself alone in her Boston hotel suite. Staring at the piles of documents on her desk, the urgent pulse of the summit had faded, replaced by a subdued, almost eerie calm. Morning light filtered through floor-to-ceiling windows, revealing a city going about its everyday routine, oblivious to the corporate drama unfolding inside the quiet corners of her mind. She flipped through pages, outlining potential structures for the partnership. Each clause pointed to deeper questions about her responsibilities. Did she truly want to guide portions of a company once synonymous with her own heartbreak? Did she have the emotional bandwidth to maintain objectivity? A gentle knock broke her thoughts. Alicia poked her head in, balancing a tray with a freshly brewed pot of coffee. You haven't had breakfast, have you? Thought you could use something warm. Isabella offered a small, grateful smile. You're a lifesaver. My stomach's been in knots. Alicia set the tray down. You've had a lot on your plate, emotionally and professionally. How are you holding up? Isabella's eyes flicked back to the documents. I'm relieved, oddly enough. Marcus, stepping down, avoided a bigger collapse. But there's this lingering weight of uncertainty. We're entering uncharted territory if we proceed with a partial takeover of Reynolds Corporation. Sipping her coffee, she admitted a more personal concern. I thought I'd feel triumphant if he ever needed my help. But now that it's happened, it's not satisfying. It's heavy. I keep recalling Harriet's advice about not letting revenge poison me. I guess I never realized how complicated it would be to show mercy. Alicia nodded, taking a seat across from her. I know you had every right to turn your back on him, but that's not who you are. You've never been one to take the easy way out. They reflected quietly for a moment. Outside, a distant honk of traffic punctuated the silence. Isabella admitted that part of her still felt a sting of old wounds. Every time she saw Marcus's name in the headlines, she remembered the dismissive words he used to fling at her. Yet, in the swirl of regret and empathy, she also recognized she was stronger now. The sense of vulnerability that once haunted her had transformed into resolve. Eventually, Alicia's phone buzzed with a text. Glancing at it, she said, Sonia's down at the lobby. She just finished some preliminary calls with the Reynolds board members. They're drafting a memorandum of understanding. Isabella set her coffee cup down. It's moving faster than I expected. Alicia shrugged. They're desperate to demonstrate accountability. Plus, your track record of transparency is exactly what they need right now. If they can secure your involvement, it shows the market they're serious about turning a corner. Isabella nodded, a swirl of pride and apprehension coursing through her. And what about Marcus? Alicia hesitated. He's staying under the radar. Gave a single press interview last night, said he'd fully cooperate. He's no longer in direct control of the negotiations. Bryce and the board have taken the lead. A quiet rush of relief filled Isabella. Negotiating with the board might prove more straightforward than dealing with Marcus's mixed emotions and personal baggage. Still, the memory of their conversation lingered. He had apologized, acknowledged his mistakes, even displayed humility. It was more than she ever thought she'd witness. She realized she needed some clarity of her own. Rising from her chair, she told Alicia, "Give me a bit. I need some fresh air, maybe a short walk by the harbor before we dive back into everything." Outside, she found the autumn breeze brisk but oddly refreshing. The harbor's water reflected the morning sun in rippling gold. Joggers passed by, people walked dogs, and the world carried on. Isabella stood by the railing, letting the steady motion of the water lull her. She closed her eyes, replaying her journey, her humble beginnings, the painful divorce, the uphill climb to build Torres Innovations, and now this unexpected turn. If someone had told her a decade ago she'd be deciding the fate of Marcus's corporation, she'd have laughed in disbelief. A sense of profound reflection settled over her. Life had a way of circling back to old chapters, offering the chance to rewrite endings we thought were fixed. This time, she wasn't helpless or resentful. She was forging a path that balanced justice with empathy, challenging, yes, but also a testament to how far she'd come. At last, she inhaled deeply and glanced at her watch. The negotiations wouldn't wait. With a steadier mind, she walked back toward the hotel, ready to tackle the next phase. She couldn't predict the outcome, but she felt more grounded than ever. The heartbreak that once defined her now seemed like a stepping stone, pushing her toward a future shaped by wisdom and compassion. By midday, Isabella stood in a temporary conference room secured by her legal team. The large windows revealed a chilly, overcast sky, yet the fluorescent lighting inside gave everything a crisp, business-like clarity. Clustered around a long rectangular table were representatives from Torres Innovations, Reynolds Corporation board members, and a small group of attorneys. Pages of drafted agreements lay before them, legal language that could chart a brand new direction for both entities. Isabella felt an undercurrent of nervous excitement. Despite her uncertainties, she recognized this moment as a testament to her personal transformation. She had once been the woman who felt overshadowed in every boardroom. Now, every eye in the room turned to her for leadership. She noticed the subtle nods of encouragement from Alicia, who sat to her right, and the trusting expression on Sonia's face, who was busy clarifying points with one of the attorneys. Bryce Miller, the veteran executive representing Reynolds Corporation, cleared his throat. "Ms. Torres, we've reviewed the terms you proposed. Our board is amenable to them, provided we can agree on a timeline for fulfilling the due diligence requirements." Isabella flipped through a typed document. "I understand the urgency on your side. However, my team insists on thorough financial audits and ethical compliance checks before we assume any operational control. We can't risk liability." An attorney for Reynolds Corporation chimed in. "We are prepared to expedite those audits. We believe that, in light of Mr. Reynolds' resignation, the corporate culture is already shifting. We intend full cooperation." As they hashed out details, everything from distribution rights to staff transitions, Isabella noticed her own voice carried authority. She spoke without shrinking, her posture upright, her tone firm but fair. Alicia occasionally whispered reminders or suggestions, but the final decisions came from Isabella's judgment. It was a far cry from the days when she felt too small to speak up. The meeting ran long, with each paragraph of the memorandum dissected. Yet, rather than fatigue, Isabella felt energized. This was the vision she'd always had for herself, a role where her expertise, values, and leadership were indispensable. The synergy wasn't just about merging businesses. It was about reinforcing a moral standard in an industry too often driven by greed. After hours of negotiation, they adjourned for a late lunch. As people began collecting their notes, Bryce approached Isabella privately. "I want you to know that many of us on the board supported Marcus for years. We believed in him. Now, we see our mistake. Your willingness to step in means a great deal to everyone whose job depends on a stable Reynolds Corporation." Isabella offered a polite smile. "I'm doing this for the employees, not to resurrect Marcus's ambitions." "As long as we're clear on that, I think we can work together." Bryce gave a humble nod. "Understood." Outside the conference room, Alicia and Sonia flanked Isabella, their expressions bright despite evident tiredness. "You were amazing in there," Sonia said. "Firm, decisive, empathetic, everything a true leader should be." Isabella felt heat rise in her cheeks. "I couldn't have done it without both of you." Alicia smiled proudly. "Remember how terrified you were the first time you pitched your idea to a small group of investors? Look at you now, forming a deal that could reshape an entire corporation." They made their way toward a quieter lounge area to grab snacks and coffee. As Alicia and Sonia chatted about next steps, drafting a public statement, scheduling more audits, Isabella's mind drifted back to her earliest days with Marcus. How she used to stand in the background at lavish events, overshadowed by his confidence and wealth. She thought about the nights she cried alone, convinced she was worthless. Those memories felt distant, as though they belonged to another person. A text beeped on her phone. It was Harriet Coleman. "Proud of you. You're leading with both intelligence and heart. That's rare. Keep it up." Isabella smiled. For the first time, she felt she was embodying the person Harriet always believed she could be. Samantha Brooks appeared, wearing a bright grin. "I heard the negotiations went well. I'm excited for our future collaboration too. Integrating some Reynolds resources could fast-track our joint venture idea." Isabella nodded. "I think we're on track to finalize those details once the audits confirm everything." "How's your board reacting?" "Cautiously optimistic," Samantha replied. "They see this as a chance for us to do real good, expanding access to tech for underserved communities. That's something that resonates with them." A wave of satisfaction coursed through Isabella. Despite the turmoil, a silver lining was emerging, an alignment of companies that could genuinely benefit society. This potential for positive impact fueled her determination even more. By evening, Isabella found a moment of solitude. She stepped outside onto a balcony overlooking the city lights. A cool wind ruffled her hair. She closed her eyes, inhaling deeply. The woman she saw in her mind's eye was no longer overshadowed or haunted by the old heartbreak. She was shaped by it, but not defined by it. Her transformation felt tangible, a new core of self-assuredness she hadn't possessed before. Yes, there were more steps to take, more hurdles to clear, but for once she felt steady in her footing. She was a leader forging her own destiny, unafraid to merge compassion with ambition. 2 days later, the Boston Summit had officially ended, and most exhibitors had left the convention center. Yet Isabella lingered in the city to tie up loose ends. Negotiations with the Reynolds board were entering a critical phase, finalizing the memorandum of understanding that would allow Torres Innovations partial oversight of certain Reynolds departments. She also wanted to formalize her new alliance with Samantha Brooks's company. In a quiet conference suite at her hotel, Isabella laid out documents on a large oval table. Alicia, Sonia, and Samantha studied the pages, adding comments and highlighting concerns. The energy felt both tense and hopeful, like architects refining blueprints for an ambitious skyscraper. Alicia tapped a paragraph on employee retention. "We need clarity on how Reynolds' workforce will transition under this agreement. We can't promise job security if their own finances remain shaky." Samantha nodded. "But these people need reassurance. Maybe we should include language guaranteeing severance packages if positions are phased out." Isabella scribbled notes. "That might require a separate funding source, but I agree it's about creating a safety net. Let's highlight that and bring it up with Bryce tomorrow." The hotel room phone rang and Sonia answered, her eyes lighting up. "It's Harriet Coleman. She's in the lobby." Within minutes, Harriet swept into the suite, clad in a tailored tweed blazer that gave her an air of dignified calm. "I thought I'd bring a little moral support," she said, setting down a tote bag of sandwiches and pastries. "You've been working non-stop." They gratefully paused to eat. Amid bites of food, Harriet asked about the final steps required. Isabella explained that the next day they'd meet with Bryce and a legal team to iron out the last points before making any public announcement. Harriet listened attentively, then looked at Isabella. "And how are you feeling about all of this? You've been carrying such a heavy load." Isabella paused, considering her emotions carefully. "It's a mix," she admitted. "Relief that we've come so far, worry about the uncertainties ahead, and, believe it or not, a strange sense of gratitude that life gave me this chance to reclaim my narrative, but it's still complicated. Marcus is in the background somewhere, and I don't know if he'll fully accept the changes we're implementing." Harriet's gaze was warm. "People don't change overnight, but he has taken the first steps, and you've provided him with a moral template to follow. Whether he embraces it is up to him." After finishing the quick meal, the group dove back into the documents. By late afternoon, they had hammered out a cohesive plan outlining how Torres Innovations would oversee technology, compliance, and ethical reviews for select Reynolds departments. Samantha's Brooks Solutions would partner in research and development, accelerating new products aimed at bridging digital divides. A knock at the door signaled the arrival of an official courier delivering updated financial reports from the Reynolds auditing firm. Sonia scanned them, her face reflecting cautious optimism. So far, nothing catastrophic beyond what we knew. The real test will be how quickly we can restructure. Harriet, sipping tea, leaned against the counter. You're in the final stretch. The next steps are critical, but from what I see, you've covered the major pitfalls. As evening approached, Samantha excused herself to prepare for her own board meeting, while Harriet stepped outside to take a call. Alicia, Sonia, and Isabella remained around the table, each quietly reviewing notes. The hush felt loaded with anticipation. Finally, Alicia broke the silence. "Bella," she said, using the nickname she'd rarely employed in public, "do you realize you're about to do something extraordinary? You'll be leading a massive reorganization while also forging a new partnership that could help countless people." Isabella's eyes misted with emotion she didn't fully expect. "I never set out to rescue Marcus's empire," she murmured. "But if this means stabilizing those jobs and creating a more ethical business environment, then maybe this is what all those years of hard work were preparing me for." Sonia offered a nod of agreement. "You're not just building a bigger empire. You're reshaping how people view corporate responsibility. That's worth every sleepless night, in my opinion." A wave of gratitude swelled in Isabella. She silently thanked the universe for surrounding her with allies who believed in the same principles. There was still the official final agreement to sign, the press to address, and a workforce anxious about their futures. But the blueprint was there, ready to be shared with the world. Tomorrow would be the ultimate test of her resolve. She would either sign a landmark deal that merged her moral vision with economic necessity, or she'd walk away if the terms compromised her integrity. Still, Isabella sensed that she was on the brink of something even greater than success. Perhaps a redemption, not just for Marcus, but for every sacrifice she'd endured in the past decade. Bright morning light flooded the grand conference room where the final meeting was set to take place. Rows of chairs faced a long table draped in white linen. Cameras from various media outlets were already positioned, eager to capture any historic announcement. Journalists milled about, whispering that a major corporate deal was about to be sealed, one that would shift the balance of the tech industry. Isabella arrived with Alicia and Sonia, each dressed in professional attire that reflected both confidence and solemnity. Samantha Brooks joined them, offering a reassuring smile. Moments later, Bryce Miller and several Reynolds board members walked in, accompanied by legal advisors. The tension was palpable. This was the day they would either cement the transitional deal or watch it collapse. At exactly 10 o'clock, Harriet Coleman appeared in the back of the room, nodding supportively at Isabella. Taking a deep breath, Isabella stepped behind the main table, flanked by Alicia and Sonia. Bryce took his seat opposite her, the board members settling around him. Everyone seemed to understand the gravity of what was about to unfold. One of the lawyers cleared his throat and spoke into a microphone. "We've gathered here to finalize the Memorandum of Understanding between Torres Innovations, Reynolds Corporation, and Brooks Solutions. This agreement outlines a transitional partnership, leadership oversight, and ethical compliance measures. Each party will have the opportunity to sign today." Isabella felt her heart pound as she glanced over the typed pages. It was all there. The financial controls, the guidelines for staff retention, the conditions for continuous oversight. Samantha's role was specified in a segment detailing cooperative R&D ventures and expansions into underserved markets. The document was a testament to compromise, transparency, and innovation, a direct contrast to the secrecy that had once characterized Reynolds Corporation. Bryce leaned forward. On behalf of Reynolds Corporation, we accept the terms. We believe this alliance marks a new chapter, one focused on honesty and the well-being of our employees. We're ready to sign. A flicker of relief crossed Isabella's features. She read through her copy one last time, voice steady as she addressed the room. Torres Innovations is committed to ethical growth. We will provide oversight, resources, and guidance as Reynolds Corporation restructures. We will not condone any hidden dealings or unethical practices. And if new information surfaces that violates these terms, we reserve the right to withdraw. Bryce nodded solemnly. Understood. Samantha added, Brooks Solutions is thrilled to play a part in this transformation. Together, we can deliver products and services that prioritize real human needs. The lawyers distributed pens and directed each principal to sign various spots. Cameras clicked rapidly, capturing the moment as Isabella, Bryce, and Samantha put ink to paper. Applause broke out among observers, and a wave of chatter rippled across the room. Even some of the more cynical journalists appeared intrigued by the prospect of a cooperative venture built on moral ideals. Then, just as the final signatures were penned, a hush fell. Marcus Reynolds, appearing at the back of the room, made his way forward, drawing every eye in the crowd. He was dressed simply, looking more subdued than ever. Though no longer in an official capacity, he seemed determined to speak. "Thank you for letting me say a few words," he began, voice subdued yet earnest. "I'm not here as a CEO anymore. I'm here as the man who made grave errors that nearly destroyed a company." He glanced at Isabella, then at Bryce. "I want to acknowledge Ms. Torres and the Reynolds board for putting aside personal grievances and focusing on what's best for the employees and the industry. Your example has humbled me." A reporter called out, "Are you endorsing this deal, Mr. Reynolds?" Marcus nodded. "Absolutely. It's the right thing. My hope is that the new Reynolds Corporation becomes a place of genuine innovation and integrity, and I plan to cooperate fully with any investigations or inquiries." He stepped back, exhaling slowly. Isabella saw the weight in his eyes, the regret that no longer seemed performative, but deeply felt. A swirl of emotions flooded her, memories of the past, the bitterness of his betrayal, and the unanticipated empathy she felt upon witnessing his remorse. Nonetheless, her focus remained on the future they had just agreed upon. Sonia gave Isabella a discreet nudge, indicating it was time to address the media. With cameras rolling, Isabella spoke into the microphone. "This partnership is more than a financial transaction. It's a statement that we can and must prioritize ethical practices, employee welfare, and social impact in the business world. I believe in second chances, but not without accountability. Reynolds Corporation is entering a new phase, and Torres Innovations will be there to ensure the mistakes of the past aren't repeated." Reporters clamored for questions. Alicia stepped in to moderate, allowing a few inquiries. Samantha answered one about the timeline for product rollouts, while Bryce discussed immediate steps for restructuring. Isabella handled questions about regulatory oversight and potential market reactions. Through it all, a cautious optimism pervaded. When the press briefing concluded, Harriet made her way to Isabella, giving her a proud smile. "You've come a long way from the woman who once doubted her own worth. This is a defining moment. You've proven that empathy and determination can coexist at the highest levels of power." Isabella felt a swell of emotion, tears almost pricking her eyes. The applause, the flashing bulbs, the mixture of relief and anticipation. It was all overwhelming, but in the best possible way. She clutched Harriet's hand, nodding her thanks. As the crowd began to disperse, Marcus approached quietly, a hesitant air about him. "Congratulations. You saved my former company from disaster, and in the process might have saved me from myself." Isabella studied him, the corners of her mouth curving into a subdued smile. "No one person can fix everything alone, but this is a start." Marcus looked down, swallowing hard. "I don't expect forgiveness, but I'm grateful for your fairness. If there's ever a way I can repay that—" Isabella met his gaze, her voice firm, yet not unkind. "Just honor your word. That's enough." They exchanged a small nod, and Marcus stepped aside. The day had brought a decisive resolution, a signed agreement, a path to redemption for a fallen empire, and a reaffirmation of everything Isabella believed about leading with conscience. Though many challenges lay ahead, the moment itself shone with promise. This was the reward of her trials, a chance to breathe new life into a broken system, guided by the unwavering strength she'd gained along her journey. The ink had barely dried on the newly signed agreements when Isabella boarded a train back to New York, seeking a rare pocket of calm in the aftermath of the Boston summit. Late autumn sunlight streamed through the windows, painting golden stripes across the cabin. She settled into a window seat, nursing a cup of herbal tea and letting the rhythmic clack of wheels on tracks soothe her jumbled thoughts. Despite her triumph, the tension of the past weeks still weighed on her shoulders. She reflected on the magnitude of what had just unfolded. Torres Innovations had secured a transformative partnership with Reynolds Corporation under strict ethical guidelines, and Samantha Brooks's firm would collaborate on initiatives aimed at underserved communities. Yet even with these victories, Isabella sensed a frayed nerve inside herself, a tender spot she'd hoped success might mend. It was as though each milestone brought both reassurance and a faint echo of the old ache she once felt at Marcus's dismissals. Halfway through the journey, Alicia joined her, laptop in hand. "Thought you might want company," she said, sliding into the seat across the table. "I figured we could review some transitional updates." Isabella offered a wan smile. "Sure, let's go over whatever's pressing." They opened a joint memo from Bryce Miller and the Reynolds board, detailing next steps. Isabella read line after line about staffing changes, compliance audits, and the plan to keep employees informed at every turn. Alicia typed notes on deadlines and reminded Isabella of upcoming discussions with potential overseas investors. The swirl of tasks felt never-ending, yet Isabella welcomed the focus. It gave her mind structure amid emotional turbulence. Marcus also signed off on everything, Alicia noted. He's sticking to his promise of collaboration, even though he's stepping out of the public eye. It's strange to see him so humbled. Isabella didn't raise her eyes from the screen. "It is strange," she admitted, her voice quiet. "I feel relief and sadness all at once. I keep thinking about how different our lives would have been if he'd shown this willingness to compromise years ago." Alicia studied her friend's face. "Maybe you needed to walk your own path without him. Maybe that was the only way you could have blossomed." Isabella gave a soft hum of agreement. She realized with startling clarity that she was no longer bound to the lingering pain of Marcus's rejection. Instead, she felt a cautious sense of empathy for the man he had become, a person who had lost nearly everything but was trying, at last, to make amends. This duality, victory laced with compassion, made her feel both empowered and unexpectedly vulnerable. Later, as the train crossed a wide river, Alicia dozed off, leaving Isabella to her own musings. She let her gaze drift to the water below, reflecting the orange glow of the setting sun. The kaleidoscope of color reminded her of how far she had come. A poor woman once dismissed as too simple, now shaping entire corporate landscapes. And yet, Success did not magically erase deeper emotional scars. They remained, requiring gentle acknowledgement rather than denial. Arriving in New York at dusk, they disembarked at Penn Station and found David, Isabella's faithful assistant, waiting amid the bustling crowd. He greeted them with a relieved grin. "So many reporters are asking for your comment, Miss Torres. You're the talk of the business world." She nodded, adjusting her scarf. "Let's schedule a press update in a few days. I need time to get my bearings." They stepped outside into the chill air, hailing a taxi that lurched through congested streets. The familiar skyline blinked to life in the evening gloom. Billboards and neon signs shone overhead, a chaotic tapestry that once overwhelmed Isabella, but now felt like an old friend. She realized with a pang that despite her expanded horizons, this city, her hometown, still housed a piece of her heart, the part that learned resilience by surviving heartbreak and scarcity. Back in her apartment, she greeted the comfortable surroundings with a weary appreciation. The plush sofa, the carefully chosen artwork, the windows framing skyscrapers she once thought unreachable, all of it bore the imprint of her arduous journey. She sank into the sofa cushions, letting her eyes close for a moment's peace. In the quiet, she sensed a tender ache in her chest, an echo of past wounds that had not fully healed but no longer dictated her sense of self. Alicia placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "We'll get through this next phase, Bella." Step by step, Isabella exhaled, pushing aside the swirl of conflicting emotions, gratitude, apprehension, mild sorrow, just enough to find her footing. "Yes," she agreed softly, "one step at a time." A week later, Isabella found herself standing outside the Bronx apartment building where she grew up. The red brick facade, chipped in places and patched in others, contrasted sharply with the sleek Manhattan high-rises she now inhabited. Still, the building carried countless memories. Her mother scolding her for staying out too late, neighbors hollering from their windows, the smell of freshly fried plantains drifting from a local bodega. She'd come here seeking a sense of her own roots, a reminder of why she began this journey in the first place. As she climbed the stoop, an older woman recognized her immediately. "Isabella! Long time, girl!" the woman called from her window. "You two fancy to visit us now?" The teasing tone was laced with genuine warmth. Isabella laughed, genuine fondness in her voice. "Never too fancy, Mrs. Guzman. How are you doing?" "Alive and kicking," the neighbor replied. "I see your name all over the news. Big shot, making deals with those Fortune 500 types." "Trying to do some good too," Isabella answered, waving goodbye as she entered the building's lobby. Inside, she found peeling linoleum floors and chipped mailboxes that felt oddly comforting. Memories rushed in, flickers of a leaner life when every dime mattered. She had once worried this place would confine her dreams. Now she stood here a success, but not without her share of heartache. It struck her that success and struggle could coexist more often than she realized. Making her way up the stairs, she knocked on the door of a small unit. Her childhood friend Marta opened it, her face lighting up. "Bella, what are you doing here?" Isabella stepped inside, hugging Marta. The apartment smelled of café con leche and cinnamon, instantly transporting her back to weekends spent chatting about teenage crushes and part-time jobs. Marta ushered her into a cramped living room, the furniture worn but inviting. "I wanted to see you," Isabella explained. "I've been so wrapped up in corporate drama. I nearly forgot how much I need to connect with people who knew me before all this." Marta handed her a warm mug, raising an eyebrow. "Corporate drama, huh? Let me guess. It involves that ex-husband of yours." Isabella's rueful smile said it all. She recounted the broad strokes of what had transpired at the summit, Marcus's downfall, the restructuring of Reynolds Corporation, and her role in guiding its future. She left out some details but conveyed the emotional toll, the swirl of vindication, pity, and moral duty. Marta shook her head, clearly both amazed and indignant. He walked out on you. You could have let him sink. No one would blame you. But you helped him anyway. Isabella stared into her coffee. It's not about helping him exactly, more about saving the employees and safeguarding an entire network of people who rely on that business. It also gives me a chance to promote ethics in an industry that desperately needs it. Marta's expression softened. You always were the decent one, Bella. Even when we were kids, you never liked seeing anyone suffer. They reminisced about simpler times, sneaking into the local park after dark, saving pennies to buy shared sodas. Isabella laughed at the memory of how easily thrilled they were by the smallest treats. Yet she also recalled the quiet desperation she felt, longing for a life of more opportunities. She realized that in many ways, her Bronx upbringing had molded her resilience and empathy. You've done well, Marta observed, patting Isabella's hand, but don't forget to enjoy what you've built. Don't let someone else's mess overshadow your own happiness. Isabella smiled in gratitude. I needed that reminder. They chatted for another hour about local gossip, family news, and the ups and downs of adulthood. Before leaving, Isabella insisted on helping with some minor repairs in the kitchen, tightening a loose cabinet hinge with a small screwdriver she found in the drawer. Marta teased, "Look at Miss Big CEO, fixing my cabinets." Just because I handle million-dollar contracts doesn't mean I can't handle a loose hinge, Isabella joked back. When she finally stepped outside, the late afternoon sun painted the tenement buildings in warm hues. The swirl of city life felt different now, familiar, but with a clarity that comes from stepping away and returning. She understood that her journey wasn't about severing ties with her past, but rather weaving all those threads together into a tapestry of who she was becoming. For the first time since the Boston summit, she felt a sense of homecoming that went beyond addresses and job titles. She had returned to where it all began, not as the abandoned wife of a millionaire or the CEO chasing validation, but as a woman who'd reconciled her roots with her newfound vision of the world. That realization filled her heart with cautious optimism, reminding her that the greatest triumphs often lie in bridging who we were with who we strive to be. The following month, a mild winter settled over Manhattan, with temperatures cold enough for frosty mornings, but not so harsh as to chase people entirely indoors. Isabella stood in the foyer of a sleek auditorium in Midtown, smoothing the lapel of her blazer. She was preparing to speak at a forum on ethical entrepreneurship, hosted by a well-regarded non-profit that championed women in business. As she glanced around the lobby, she saw diverse faces, young startup founders, seasoned professionals, community advocates. It struck her how much she once yearned to join such gatherings, back when her life was consumed by self-doubt and Marcus's belittling remarks. Now she stood at the podium's threshold as an example of resilience and integrity. Alicia and Sonia accompanied her for moral support, each handling last-minute details. The hush of anticipation in the auditorium made Isabella's heart flutter. When the MC finally introduced her, she stepped onto the stage, scanning the attentive crowd. In the front row, Harriet Coleman sat next to Samantha Brooks, both offering encouraging smiles. "Good afternoon," Isabella began, voice steady yet warm. "I stand before you not just as the CEO of Torres Innovations, but as someone who learned a great deal from the most difficult chapters of her life." She shared the highlights of her story, starting from humble beginnings in the Bronx, her tumultuous marriage to a self-made millionaire, the crushing divorce that threatened to shatter her spirit, and her decision to build Torres Innovations from the ground up. She spoke candidly about the doubts that nearly stopped her and the allies who believed in her potential. "The most important lesson I've learned," she continued, "is that integrity and empathy are not weaknesses in business. They are, in fact, the pillars upon which sustainable success is built. I've seen what happens when greed overshadows ethics, when ambition tramples on humanity. It never ends well." A gentle wave of applause rippled through the room. She went on to describe how she'd recently joined forces with Samantha Brooks's company and stepped in to restructure Reynolds Corporation's flawed system. Without directly naming Marcus or airing personal grievances, she highlighted how precarious it was to build an empire on deceit. Her voice swelled with conviction, emphasizing that leaders must be accountable not only for profits, but for the well-being of those who depend on them. When she finished, the audience erupted in applause. Questions followed, many from young women looking for guidance. One asked, "How do you keep your moral compass when so many around you prioritize the bottom line?" Isabella considered her response carefully. "I stay anchored by remembering the people behind every product or service. It's easy to lose sight of the human impact when you're buried in spreadsheets. Also, I surround myself with individuals like Alicia, Sonia, and Harriet, who aren't afraid to challenge me if I ever stray." After the session, a swarm of attendees approached, eager to express their admiration or seek advice. Isabella signed a few books, exchanged business cards, and listened to personal stories. She noticed how often these women referred to feeling invisible or insufficient, recalling those sentiments herself. Over and over, she told them, "Your worth isn't defined by someone else's measure of success." Samantha eventually joined her, sipping from a disposable coffee cup. "That was brilliant," she said, nodding at the dispersing crowd. "You managed to transform your ordeal into a lesson for all of us." Isabella smiled. "It still feels surreal, but if I can help someone avoid the mistakes I made or see their own potential sooner, then it's worth it." An older woman approached, introducing herself as a community organizer working in low-income neighborhoods. She asked if Torres Innovations or Brooks Solutions would ever consider sponsoring a local tech lab. Samantha brightened at the idea, and Isabella promised to discuss it with her board. "This is exactly the sort of initiative I'd love to support," she said. "Let's exchange contact information." The woman departed with a grateful smile, leaving Isabella and Samantha inspired by the possibilities. Alicia appeared next, announcing they needed to leave soon for another meeting. Isabella's heart brimmed with satisfaction as she realized how far her influence extended now. She wasn't just running a company, she was shaping a broader social conversation around ethics, compassion, and the possibility of redemption in business. As they gathered their belongings to depart, Harriet came over, her eyes alight with pride. "If Marcus could see you now," she began, but Isabella gently cut her off with a soft grin. "This isn't about him anymore," she replied. "My path isn't defined by his failures or even by our past marriage. It's defined by the choices I make today, for myself and for the people who believe in what we can accomplish together." Harriet nodded, her smile deepening. "Then keep making those choices. The world needs more leaders like you." With that, Isabella headed for the exit, buoyed by the knowledge that her personal journey had become a guiding light for others. It was a far cry from the timid woman she'd once been. In her place stood someone deeply aware of her own strength, determined to use it for something greater than her own success. Several months passed, and the city blossomed into a vibrant spring. Cherry blossoms lined the park paths, and warm breezes replaced winter's chill. Isabella found herself awake early one Saturday morning, slipping on a casual jacket before heading to a cozy cafe near her apartment. The cafe bustled with weekend energy, couples chatting over croissants, friends debating the best brunch spots. She chose a corner table, content to people-watch and reflect on everything that had transpired. Her phone buzzed with notifications, updates from Reynolds Corporation's transitional board, progress reports from the philanthropic tech lab in the Bronx that Torres Innovations had begun funding, a message from Samantha about the next phase of their collaborative software. Each alert carried evidence of a story that had once seemed impossible, a story of redemption, growth, and moral renewal in the world of business. After ordering a cappuccino, she gazed out the window. The familiar Manhattan streets no longer felt menacing but welcoming, proof of the life she had built despite adversity. She thought of Marcus, who had quietly relocated to a smaller home outside the city. He had reached out via email now and then with updates about ongoing investigations and how he was supporting the new leadership at Reynolds Corporation. While their history still held painful echoes, their communication was civil, even respectful. The bitterness she once felt had softened into an understanding that people could change, though not without cost. Over time, Isabella had developed a newfound appreciation for the complexities of forgiveness. It wasn't a simple matter of letting go or condoning wrongdoings. It was an ongoing process of releasing anger, releasing the desire for revenge, releasing the notion that one's past defines the future. In doing so, she found a deeper well of empathy for herself and for others. Alicia arrived, breathless from jogging. "I knew I'd find you here," she teased, dropping onto the seat opposite Isabella. "Can't resist that cappuccino, can you?" They shared a laugh, and Alicia launched into a story about how their philanthropic project in the Bronx was gaining momentum. A group of teenage girls had visited the tech lab, discovering new career dreams they'd never imagined. One of them even expressed a wish to become an entrepreneur like Isabella someday. Hearing that lit up Isabella's face. "That's what it's all about," Isabella murmured, heart swelling with pride. "Not just dollars and mergers, but inspiring people to see possibilities beyond their circumstances." Alicia nodded. "It's a reminder that all the corporate negotiations and long hours were worth it. You're shaping more than just an industry, you're shaping lives." They talked about future plans, expansions, scholarships for underserved youth, and a possible collaboration in healthcare technology to simplify patient data management. The conversation felt like a natural flow of ideas rather than a high-pressure business agenda. Isabella felt grateful to have a colleague who shared her vision and a circle of allies, including Sonia, Harriet, and Samantha, who kept pushing the boundaries of what ethical entrepreneurship could look like. Soon, Alicia's phone buzzed, prompting her to dash off to another commitment. Left alone with her cappuccino, Isabella let her gaze drift to the swirl of foam. She remembered the times she'd felt invisible, hopeless. She thought of how Marcus had once told her she wasn't sophisticated enough to stand by his side, how she believed him in her lowest moments. Now, she understood the irony. Her unsophisticated qualities, her empathy, her determination to stay true to her core, were what enabled her to succeed in ways Marcus never had. Finishing her cappuccino, she gathered her bag and stepped onto the sidewalk. The morning sun warmed her cheeks, and the gentle buzz of the city felt comforting. She strolled past flower stalls and street vendors, absorbing the tapestry of diverse faces and languages. Each block brought memories and new dreams mingling together in the fresh air. Arriving at a small park, she found an empty bench near a patch of blooming tulips. She sat for a moment, watching children chase each other on the grass, senior citizens reading newspapers on nearby benches. A flutter of contentment rippled through her. She didn't need grand gestures or the public's constant applause to feel whole. She had discovered a truth far more valuable. That true worth isn't bestowed by others. It emerges when we refuse to let defeat define us. when we channel our pain into building something better for ourselves and for those we care about. A soft breeze rustled the leaves overhead, and Isabella closed her eyes, letting the quiet sense of peace wash over her. There were no final triumphs in life, no neat endings tied up in a bow, only new chapters that beckon with promise. As she reopened her eyes to the world around her, she carried with her the calm certainty that her life, once marked by betrayal and struggle, had transformed into a journey of resilience, purpose, and boundless possibility. I hope you enjoyed today's story. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more stories like this. Leave a like and comment below what you thought of the story. See you in the next video.